Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday or Sunday if you're in the future, like my fine friend Mark here, who once again joins me for the...
Future's not great. Future's not great. Oh, yeah, no, future's not great.
I feel that. Oh, my goodness. Every damn day.
Oh. I know.
But, I mean, it's not all bad because every day is another day. I get to, exist, potentially watch a sunrise when it isn't overcast,
That's
potentially
true.
see the stars.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and people are sort of slowly waking up to what's going on. So that's nice. I mean, it's kind of that sort of told you so feeling, but it's
little Schadenfreude.
Yeah, which isn't really that helpful, but yeah.
I mean, it in a situation where you can't make things better, it's one way to feel slightly better.
Yeah, that's true. If it does serve our mental health well, is it useful? Yeah, probably. Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, so we are doing the elusive, possibly our very first ever part 3.
It definitely
is. This is the epic conclusion of Planet Peterson, Grayson Hawk versus Apollos and Travis over atheism versus Christianity, which is the truest of the truthiness.
I got to say, I've been really impressed by both Eric from Planet Peterson and Grayson Hawk. Grayson in the chat, big shout out to Grayson. I'm sure Ember can let you on if you do want to come on and sort of comment on it. Look, I've been really impressed.
Sure.
The arguments have been very concise, well formed, really well explained as well. Like just sort of the other side, I think it's more the other side is just so rambly. They haven't really put anything coherent together. And when we're talking about presentations, their presentations sucked. Like they had all of these memes and stuff on, which I don't know how you can take them seriously when they have that kind of stuff. It's awful. So, but no, that Eric and Grayson have done a really good job, like a fantastic job.
Yeah, from the other side, we've Travis, I think he actually does have something of a compelling narrative, you might say, by hypothesizing that all is good because there's a narrative. The Bible is true because there's a narrative structure. I mean, it's a crap argument, but it's got novelty, and it's not as bad as many we've heard.
That's true. I always do. I mean, it's not as bad as it is pretty bad. I look. It's basically like I've never heard somebody use an argument for the truth of God existence as it's a cool story, bro. But we've seen it here. Basically, I really am straw manning. I really am. But cool story, bro. Like that's literally, I'm joking. It's more than that, but not much more. Yeah.
Oh,
I think Grayson wants a link.
Yep, already sent. Wait.
Look, I'm ahead in time. You're ahead in cognition, quite frankly, because it's early in the morning.
I have my moments.
Yeah.
I'm at the end of a long day after a week of very little sleep, so I'm sure we'll have our equilibrium point at somewhere here. Yeah. But as always, it's wonderful to see you all in the live chat. I see John F. McDropout. It's a cool name. Andrew Christofferson. Hello. Patty from the Apostate Sisters, and this Mark Reed fellow. I don't.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure. Possibly a troll. We'll have to keep an eye on that character.
Bothers with that guy, like seriously.
Yeah. And those of you watching in the future who watch the playback of this, hello, future people. Do remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you can join us in future debate breakdowns and blow 'em ups and so forth. And now I've stalled long enough. We have a Grayson.
Hey,
Hey,
listen,
y'all.
how are you this time?
I'm doing great. I'm just on my phone because I'm actually uploading another debate on my channel right now on the Wi-Fi, and I didn't want to like mess that up by also streaming at the same time. So yeah, I'm doing great, doing great.
Uh,
I've got to.
that's not
I can't stay for that long right now. I kind of just like wanted to gather y'all's thoughts about like parts one and part two before y'all get into part three, and then like I might have to dip out. So, yeah, I mean, you guys have been through the two parts now. I mean, you kind of already did catch up, but that
well, I
I
really want
just
to know
this
your
was
thoughts. Yeah, I really want to
yeah,
know what your thoughts are. Like, your perception
yeah.
of how it went
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah.
Um, yeah, this was a really, really I think the word that I think about when I think of this debate is like refreshing almost because like
Right.
this is one of the only debates I think I've done with anyone willing to represent Christianity on the other side of the argument who hasn't rejected any science. And like that's like a
Hmm.
lot of Christians out there don't reject any
Right.
science. And but like those like types of Christians for whatever reason don't usually pick a debate argument with me. I can't figure out why, right? But so I found this to be very refreshing in that like both of them were like, oh yeah, no, like we accept the timeline of the consensus of science, the Big
Sure.
Bang, evolution, all of that, and
Hmm.
then we would get into oh, arguing specific miracles. Did the resurrection happen? And then at the end of this, okay, there's some things with the format maybe that should be talked about, but at the end of this, after we thought that the debate was over, we were backstage just kind of me, I genuinely like to argue with people, so I'm still picking an argument with the guy backstage, and Ryan was like, oh, this is too good of a conversation going on, so he like low key just like started like recording back live again. And that's like the
Oh, okay.
end of this debate is just like all of a sudden he's like, yeah, y'all are live. And I'm like, wait, no, you're joking. And like then the other guy was like, no, no, we're still live. And I'm like, wait, are y'all like actually joking with me? And they're like, no, we're live right now. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess let's just carry on with the debate then. And then me and
Yeah.
him had like a one-on-one, and like yeah, like the organization was interesting, to say the least. Like we couldn't get the standard whatever modern day debate normally uses for their platform was not working. And so we had to do like a whole different Google Hangouts type thing. Like it was all sort of messy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, one guy left really, really early, as far as I can recall. One guy left
Hmm.
before the other guy.
Yeah, Travis had some kind of obligation partway through the Q&A.
Oh,
I forget
that's fair.
exactly what.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Ryan's debates have a tendency to go long, and they
Yeah.
can be a real long debate. But that's okay. I mean, sometimes I'm up for it, sometimes I'm not, so it's hardly his fault. But yeah,
I mostly felt bad for the other guy because I think I don't know if you guys mentioned this specifically, but like both me and Eric are like seasoned debaters. We have YouTube channels. We've done
yeah,
dozens and dozens of debates about these kinds of topics. I don't think either opponents were at all. Like I don't know
right,
if this is their one of their first debates. It was certainly like less than 10 debates under each of their belts, if not combined. So
yeah,
there's definitely like allowing for some slack for that, but um
yeah.
I agree. The one guy, very novel, interesting argument I've never heard about how, oh, hey, life fits the overall arc of redemption and narrative structures of the Bible or something. It's an absurd argument, but hey, Ember said it best. At least it's new. And but he
Yeah.
was sort of very low energy, very difficult to listen to, like citing lots of other people and otherwise droning on. The other guy,
Oh yeah, the name
yeah.
dropping.
And,
Yes,
and and he
yes.
had that thing of sort of you bring something up, and he's like, this other person has addressed that, but didn't
Yep.
actually go through how
Yes.
it was addressed. So you're sort of like, well, I don't know what to do with that because I can't rebut something that you don't actually say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it would be like somebody going, oh well, this is a problem with evolution. You go, oh no, this scientist addressed it. Well, how
So,
did they address it? I'm not going to say. I just they addressed it. That's
so
it.
I'm curious about which part of the debate you guys are starting part three from. Like, are you going to be covering the Q&A and all, or are you just trying to get through the main central discussion And then, yeah, also thank you guys for breaking down this debate. This has been awesome. I've gone in and out, both listening live to the parts 1 and 2 and going back through the discussion, but I'm like midway through listening to part 2 right now. I haven't finished all the part 2 discussion before this. So how far did you guys make it?
We left off at about an hour 20. So I believe there's roughly 20, maybe either 20 or 30 minutes left of the discussion. And then there's a very long Q&A.
Yeah. If I mean, there's a lot of very interesting conversations that go on in the Q&A, but there's also a lot of like really boring non sequitur conversations interspersed through that. So who knows? I mean, basically at the very end of the Q&A, what me and the other guy are doing the one-on-one argument about are like the evidence for the resurrection and about whether or not any other miracles have better evidence than the resurrection that the guy doesn't believe in. Like
Oh my.
like Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal, the various Marian apparitions and those types of discussions. So it was interesting at the very tail end of the Q&A, just me and him. But yeah, the main point I was saying is that I found this debate to be very refreshing because these are not young earth creationists. They're not flat earthers. They overall seemed like two relatively normal, reasonable fellas, you know, as far as debate internet interlocutors go. So it was a pleasant, refreshing conversation.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I would
always
agree. And yeah, they weren't like a lot of too many times recently, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, Grayson. You just meet people who they just want to kill the argument, so they just start a garbage fire, like just burn it all to the ground. Yeah, so it's really refreshing to have people that are coming in good faith and arguing, you know, good faith for you know, their belief in God, but don't reject the entirety of science because of it. Like, yeah.
Yep,
Hell
I
yeah.
couldn't have said it any better myself.
Big pluses. I mean, hell, it's just hard to find good faith interlocutors. I won't go so far as to say honest, because I still very much subscribe to the Jay Bundy school of thought that you cannot honestly defend something that isn't true. But you know, good faith, you can agreeably engage with ideas. Best of all, when a person is willing to actually change their perspective when they're presented with information showing that what they believe is incorrect. But you know, we work with what we've got.
Yeah, if I hear one more time that evolution isn't true because your atheist worldview doesn't even afford for knowledge in the first place, it's like, okay, like what are we even doing here? Like every single argument with these pre-suppers, it just ends the same way. I've said, oh, you know, you can't even have knowledge, so you can't know anything, so you just automatically lose all arguments. So freaking dishonest.
I mean, you know, I presuppose nil, and you simply can't understand knowledge without, you know, our happy purple butterfly.
It is like literally the argument is I presuppose that I win and you lose.
Yes.
Well, it's a bit more complicated that if you do want, I have a way of dealing with it. I put up a video recently with Side 10 Kate on it. When I encountered him on some random calling channel where I dealt with it, and they seemed absolutely flummoxed. So I would highly recommend that video if you do want to know how to deal with pre-sub, because there were people in the comments saying, hey, I'm a Christian, but you know, why isn't Mark right? So I just
nice.
I thought it was fantastic. So there is one up there. It's called the Side 10 Spin Cycle, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of that one. I mean, I love it when Side 10 gets dunked on, period. But I mean, the one of the hosts was like a disciple of Side 10. So even after he was gone, the other guy tried to keep on. I'm like, what are you doing? So yeah, definitely go check that one out after this show, of course.
Yeah, but you know, whatever. I don't mind. It's just I approach it in a certain way. Other people have different ways they approach it, totally. But you know, it's something that's coming up more and more, because I think originated from a guy called person. And the intention was never to present arguments. The intention was to frustrate atheists. That was the intention. It was never to actually, like if you go to a university and you study philosophy, and, without going to one of these sort of Christian universities, nobody cares about presup. Presup is just saying, hey, I'm right because I'm right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, there's also like fields in philosophy that directly counter the claims of precept, like fallibilism or coherentism. Like
Yeah.
there are established schools of philosophy and metaphysics that directly counter the claims of the preceptor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah. We love to see.
So but there's no philosophers taking precept seriously. It's not.
No.
Dr. Graham Oppie's not going to do like how to counter precept because it doesn't get started in the first place. Like it just doesn't. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. There's not even a there. It is literally just using a fallacy, circular argument to assume something.
I wonder what would happen if we took a Psi 10 or a lesser precept debater, perhaps a Darth flavored person, and put them up against William Lane Craig as to whether it's valid to use precept in I don't know, just friendly fire could be amusing.
Evidentialist. Yeah, that might be hilarious, to be honest with you.
I think it would be pretty great.
I would like to put a preceptor up against somebody on their same intellectual level, like
a rock?
maybe like a 5-year-old, and then they could counter the precept argument with no you, or maybe the all-time favorite, I'm gonna hold my breath until you let me win.
Right.
Which I consider to be on the same level of, oh well, I just presuppose my worldview is correct and yours is wrong.
Well, what about a precept versus the flat earther? Wouldn't you like to see that? Like a globe-believing precept.
The thing is that most flat earthers are presuppers already.
Yes, I'm aware. But there are a few that are globe earthers, so okay. No, but that would be difficult to find, but very funny to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, and anytime we get two different groups who violently disagree, butting heads, who are ostensibly on the same side, it can be very, very amusing. Now, before we get going, this is the last for sure live stream of the month. As you all know, I sometimes do surprise random shows, but this is the last one for sure for February, and I still have 5 creator memberships to drop, so let's do that now.
Oh yeah, don't forget about them.
Yeah, don't forget
do them
those
as soon as possible, so I don't have to remember them because I know I'm going to forget. Like I know that I'll forget. So
I don't know if there's a single month where I have remembered that I have those. So I'm sorry to all of my subscribers.
I keep there's a couple of creators in the community. One of the worst offenders is Brentley, the punk apostate. Brentley is fantastic, puts on a hilarious show. I have tried to tell him like 10 times how to do the gift subs that YouTube gives us creators to distribute, and he just can't do it.
Oh, wow.
I might be like just barely above that level, to be honest. Like I'm gonna try to learn how to do that and give it out, but I haven't figured it out so far.
It makes you connect with your live chat while you're live, which is weird because for everything else, they want you to have YouTube Studio stream control running. So I don't know. Maybe I could do it from stream controls. I've never tried. I'm a silly bean. But those went to Karen Butcher, Doug, Raya, BTF Wayne, and Toto Now. Everybody do enjoy all your fun custom emojis, the exclusive content, and assorted other perks. Yeah. Hooray! I used to have a cheering button, but my computer crashed a few months ago, and it died. I had to resurrect it, and I still haven't reprogrammed all my buttons. So I don't have a cheer right now. So just hooray!
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 Huzzah!
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 Alrighty. let's bring up our fun thing. Now, again, this is a part 3. We are an hour and 20 minutes through. We're seeing a slide on the screen because I think this was Travis, keeps bringing up his slides.
Yeah, that's something that annoyed me, that absolutely annoyed me. It was like, why do you keep bringing up slide? Like, it reminded me of, I don't know if you heard this in the first part. Like I was saying, it reminds me of Hovland always having the slides in the background. And it's kind of like, and a lot of them don't have anything to do with what you're talking about. And it's just, he's got these slides and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this isn't your own personal presentation.
Like he's like gearing up for the next thing that he wants to bring up by having the slide on the screen while we're still talking about the thing we're currently talking about.
Yeah.
Like with the slides on this one, the thing that irked me was at the beginning, right? Because like I started my slideshow as asking, all right, does everybody see my slides? And everybody was like, yes. But really they didn't. Like really, I should have been more specific.
Right.
Like I should have said, does everybody see
presentation? Yeah.
Well, they didn't see my presentation. They saw like the behind the scenes of the presentation, which like everybody said was, yes, affirmative. We see your presentation. But like, no, that's not what I was asking. I was like, can you see my presentation as in the actual viewed slideshow presentation viewer? And no, they couldn't. And I got through my whole slideshow and nobody could freaking see it. Oh,
yeah. But when you asked, they didn't know that. Like yeah, come on.
Well, I assumed. I mean, like I can't read their minds. I when I said, "Can you see my presentation?" and they all said yes. I mean, like, yeah,
well,
I'm gonna think that they can see it.
Yeah,
no,
but that was
I mean they
true.
couldn't. No, they couldn't see the presentation.
No, yes, it was your presentation on the screen. Like this is the problem with language. When you say, "Can you see my presentation?" It's not the same as saying, "Can you see my slideshow that's coming up?" Like your presentation was on the screen.
I mean, what should I have said, Mark? Enlighten
I don't
me.
know. I don't know. You should.
Oh, come on! You can't get on my case about my language and then say that you don't
done
even
it
have
right
a better.
to begin with. You should have done it right to begin with.
I mean, I'm asking you, what is a better language I could use? Because you're getting on my case about not being precise enough.
Get
you
it
don't even
right
have a better.
Get it right from the start, and it wouldn't have been a problem.
Okay, well, what would you have said if you had gotten it right from the start?
What would I have said? I would have made exactly the same mistake.
Okay, well, okay.
All right,
gotcha.
I would have said, "Can you see my presentation?" And I would have said yes, and I'm like, "Okay, here we go." And I would have made exactly the same mistake, and then I would have said, "Well, I mean, yeah, they could see my presentation. I'm the one that got it wrong, like because it's not up to them to make me get my presentation right, Grayson." It's
well, okay, Mark,
them.
In their shoes, if they had asked me, "Can you see my presentation?" I would have answered no. Because I would have recognized, like, I'm only seeing the behind the scenes of the presentation, not the presentation itself. That's what the language means to me.
If I noticed that, sure, but I didn't even notice it. I didn't. That's the thing. I honestly, if I had noticed it, I would have said something, right? But honestly, watching it, I didn't notice for a long time that it wasn't actually flicking through slides because some people only have like 3 slides they go through.
I guess let me know in the comments or something if you guys have a suggestion for what I should say to avoid this problem in the future. Because like I genuinely want to know, like, can you see the final viewing of my I don't know how to even phrase the question.
I don't even know. I don't know. It's just like don't get too focused on it. It's just a it's just one of those things that happens. I've screwed up presentations. Everybody's done it at some point.
That's one more reason to. I know there's advantages to running a presentation, but if you don't, if you just verbally say your whole thing, then you run into less glitches. But that's just my take. I don't know. We've got a whole bunch more people have been dropping in. Good to see everybody. We've got Just How to Rule an Asteroid, Robin Webster, Alex Markel, Majestic Beck. I've waved at some of you because I didn't want to interrupt the flow of conversation. I can't remember who's come in and who I've already said hello to, but I saw Jay a moment ago, listening in, no doubt hanging and gather, a link to which is also in the description. And Canadian Alleman, possibly, future What's head of province? I was trying to make the reverse of a 51st state joke, like Canada's going to annex the
governor?
US, but it fell apart. Don't mind me. I need more coffee.
Oh. Look, Canadians are
gather
actually
is in
very
every
angry about that. Well, it's strange because what I've seen lately is it's so weird because Canadians have gone, oh, we're boycotting US goods. We're not buying them. Like, and everybody around the world has gone, yeah, that's expected, right? And Americans have gone, oh, I didn't realize they were so upset. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you've threatened to annex them. They've gone, well, we're not going to buy your products anymore. And the Americans have gone, really? Why would you do that? It's like, I don't understand, like, why you wouldn't think there would be repercussions for that. Like,
it's because Americans think it's a privilege and an honor to be conquered and annexed into the United States because everybody wants to be an American, Mark.
Oh wow, it's just it bewildered me. Like, it absolutely bewildered me that people were saying, "Oh, I've I didn't expect the Canadians to boycott our stuff." It's like, wow, that is the first thing I would think they would do. It's so wild, so wild.
It's the fire hose of bullshit is what it is, but it's also a tangent.
Yeah, that's true.
Where'd I put those tangents?
It's all my fault again.
They're in the database somewhere. It's fine. It's fine. Hello, Jess. Hello, PC. Hello, Stephanie. So many lovely, wonderful people. So good to see all of y'all. My apologies for not catching everybody. Right, we have a debate to review.
Uh-huh.
I suppose we could get started on that.
The main point is that like you need. I think it's very implausible that even within like the diversity of Second Temple Judaism, like where does it say that the Messiah would be killed and resurrected?
I just got done telling you for the second time it doesn't. So stop asking.
Yeah, that's sort of the point.
Hmm.
I think we started to touch on this at the end of last week, that the fact there wasn't a prophecy saying the Messiah would die and then rise. Rather, the prophecies all said he would be an all-conquering king, and that's not what happened. Kind of demonstrates Christianity is false right from the get-go. The initial premise does not match. The prophecy says one thing, this guy does a different thing. He's not the guy. It seems simple to me.
Bart Ehrman has talked a lot about this, that if you have this figure that's supposed to be the central figure of a religion, and he's supposed to bring about the kingdom of God on earth, and suddenly he passes away, then you've got to sort of go down a track of either going, well, I'm going to abandon my religion and everything that I believe in, or you say, hey, he came back. Like there's this propensity to invent stories about this person in order that he didn't fail, and he didn't, he didn't just die unceremoniously by, crucifixion. He actually overcame that, even though it doesn't look like it. So he sort of says that it does lend credence to the religion inventing stories to make it so that he didn't die, even though in a way he has to, because that's what happened. So it's kind of this. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Grayson.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mark. I was just
no worries.
saying, like, upon listening to this back, I think I know what he wanted to ask, or like should have been asking, but I think that the question he did ask is like a conflation. Like, I think that if I'm trying to be as good, like giving him the benefit of the doubt as possible, right? I think what he's trying to ask is, why would the 12 disciples or whatever come up with a resurrection if they were like not expecting their Messiah to resurrect or whatever? He's saying that would be unexpected. They would have no reason. It's unprecedented in Judaism, all this stuff. And I feel like I'm not sure if I did bring this up, but in retrospect, what I wish that I had brought up is the fact that even while Jesus was in his ministry, like during his ministry in the New Testament, it even describes as like other Jews as like rumors spreading around, like other Jews as that Jesus was actually the John the Baptist resurrected, or
Mm.
Elijah resurrected, and Elijah is obviously associated with resurrection. And so there's already this sort of association during the ministry when Jesus is alive in the biblical narrative. There's already an association with him and resurrection. So
Right.
like it doesn't even matter if specifically there's an expectation that the Messiah will be resurrected or not. Like he's asking why would the 12 disciples have even thought that even resurrection could have been a thing? It's like, well, that's why, because it was already in the air at the time, regardless of the prophecies for the Messiah figure.
Right.
Yeah,
And you
if
already had the
anybody's
story of
resurrecting,
Lazarus. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ember.
yeah, if anybody's resurrecting, there another thing that we've covered recently here, I think it was the New Year's party, was the idea that John the Baptist was Elijah resurrected, and he was a big competitor for being the Christ in that period, which is one of the reasons that there's such a hard attempt to fuse Christianity with whatever the hell John the Baptist was doing. Paul spends a lot of effort on that, saying, oh no, it's actually the same thing, and it's actually Jesus is the head dude, and John was subservient to Jesus. But there's resurrection in the air. So if you're going to make the case that your guy is the most magical being, of course he has to have all the superpowers.
There's even the Mandeans, who are like a splinter group that exists still to this day, where they revere John the Baptist as being the most important figure, and they disdain Jesus as like basically corrupting John the Baptist's image and stealing his thunder and everything like that. So like those groups still exist to this day, like with beef going all the way back then from this like competing messianic figures of Second Temple Judaism, apocalypticism.
Yeah, and I mean, some people deny Peterism. Some people, have questions about Paul. It's a fragmented religion that sort of claims to be one Christianity, but that's not really what we see when we're looking at it. And I think, to your point earlier in the debate, that you have this fragmenting religion, which has happened to all religions kind of thing. There's nothing to set it aside from the thousands and thousands of other religions that have all fragmented in this way and had different denominations or different sects associated with them. And I think that was a really good point.
Yeah, very, very. The sheer number denominates, because again, we're looking at it from an outside perspective. A lot of us in the secular community, the atheist community, we're looking at Christianity and the claims it's making and saying your claims don't seem at all different from the same types of claims made by all the other religions. I understand from inside Christianity, they see it differently. They see Christianity as one united faith with some minor disagreements about, precise details or something, but it
doesn't look so minor. It's not so minor. And plus on the thing of resurrection, like I think it's a really good point that you made, that Jesus, like other people had resurrection, but also Jesus had resurrection powers already, if the Gospels are to be believed, because he raised Lazarus from the dead. So what kind of Messiah can raise somebody else, but then succumbs to death himself? So I think this whole thing about, hey, they wouldn't have made it up. It's like, well, why did they, have the Lazarus resurrection story? And that wasn't prophesized either. It just seems to be a thing that's in there. And I think that sort of resurrection isn't a novel concept to the religion either. I mean, you had stories of the Greeks resurrecting people from Hades kind of thing, or rescuing people from Hades. You have the Egyptian myths of resurrection, like Osiris and things like that. It's not a novel concept. Like, they are aware of these other religions that believe that this person came back from the dead. So, the fact that they added that onto theirs, it's not like they had no concept of it. They would have known about these other myths.
Well, even the myths they believed in, like Elijah. I mean, Elijah
Right,
resurrected that sick that woman's sick daughter or whatever. Like
Yeah.
Elijah resurrected her in the Bible. That's even why, at least, that's why we think that they write comparisons between Jesus and Elijah in the New Testament.
Hmm.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
They had
No,
they had to
but
make-
but you
I thought
No,
that was
literally everyone just started talking all at once, and yeah,
I
it
know,
gets
I'm like-
confusing with my voice and in the video and here.
yeah. Adventures.
they
So
had
you
to
imply
make
it.
sense of what happened.
But how can they make sense of something that's not within their own like cultural or cognitive framework?
That's
just-
why a new religion was born.
Yeah, I just explained it to you twice, dude. That's why they were no longer Jews after it, and they made up a new religion. They had to change.
Well, it's not only
We're
that, but
maybe hitting a wall.
when you're sort of saying not within their cognitive framework, of course it was. Like you said, Elijah within their other religions have resurrections. It's not like something that they're unaware of. It is something that was in their tradition. So that entire thing just falls down because you're basically saying these people had never heard of resurrection. It's like, what are you talking about?
Isn't it weird though? You mentioned that, and it brings to mind the alternative possibility. Why is it that the powers Jesus has are only powers that have already been brought up by previous religions? Why does he only have stuff people have already imagined and no new powers to demonstrate he's the real God? Because this is the first time we're hearing about this new novel divine power, like, I don't know, X-ray vision or pick a thing. Can he fly? Well, never mind. There's other gods that could fly, but
I
details.
just like the limits of Jesus's powers and his miracles are so weird to me. Like specifically the one that always comes to mind, right, is where he exorcises the demons and then puts it into like a flock of 100 pigs that then go like jump off a cliff. It's just like, well, he didn't have to kill those pigs if he's an all-powerful God. Come
Right.
on, like he could just like crush the demon souls or just like turn them into like a freaking
Yeah.
paprika. I don't know.
I'll put them into rocks and crush the rocks, then no one's being hurt. Yeah, what did the pigs do? Like seriously. And did they eat them afterwards, or are they like forever?
No, they
it-
can't eat them. Mosaic
It's-
law. Yes,
oh,
a
that's
flock
true,
of
yeah.
pigs because they
flock of
flew
pigs.
off the cliff.
Yeah.
What is
Well,
a
it,
group
like
of pigs called anyway?
Herd.
Is it a herd?
it just conforms with exactly like any other early Iron Age story of like a traveling religious healer or something like that. Like it sounds like any other story of any other of the wandering itinerant rabbi miracle workers that were like pretty common back then. Jesus even recruits one of them, Simon, into his whole freaking thing. So like it's like there's so many of these guys wandering around, and like that sounds just like a story that would be indifferentiable from any of them. Like any of them would be able to exorcise a demon and put it into a herd of pigs or whatever. And then the actual guy that is God himself, an all-powerful God, you'd think that he would do something. You're right, Ember, that is like head and shoulders above the rest of the competition.
Right.
Yeah, it's why it's God's powers seem to be limited by the creativity of the people telling the story, and it's very strange.
Well,
assuming it were real.
Well, yeah, it's not really strange if you don't assume that it's real, but it's funny the apologetics we get nowadays to try and say they are novel powers. Like if you paid attention to the Dionysus argument that went on recently, where Inspiring Philosophy was saying, okay, well, Dionysus made a fountain basically have a substance that tastes like wine and looked like wine, but he didn't actually change it into wine, so it's not the same. It was the mental gymnastics you have to do to say, oh, people got drunk off this stuff coming from the fountain that looked and smelt and tasted like wine, but it wasn't actually wine. Therefore, Jesus's water to wine power is a novel one that no other had never been seen before. That is ridiculous. Like that is considering that Dionysus was the god of wine specifically. and everyone drunk from this fountain said, "Oh, it's changed to wine." I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
You know, Mark, I really like this argument. This is like a new one for me, but you're right. Like it's like if we've got previous attestations or written myths or whatever for other gods doing every single individual miracle that was attributed to Jesus. You've got the turning water into wine, you've got the resurrection, you've got like, you know, multiplying food, whatever. Any individual miracle, like the Lazarus, the exorcisms, all that, faith healings, every single one of them has similar attributions to other figures in other recorded, like written down texts. So if the Christian believes that all of those are fake, all of that is not to be trusted, none of that happened, or none of that is God, that's all demons or whatever. But when you combine all of those miracle claims, just attributing it to all one guy, then we should believe that. Then all of a sudden there's something different about that story if you attribute all these other miracles that are fake when they're individually attributed to other people. If they're all attributed to the same guy, then we can believe it.
It's much more reasonable that way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Karen Butcher raises an excellent point. Moses had some fucking powers. Jesus is just like, let me spit in your eye to cure your blood. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try it again. Like, he's got the weakest fucking power. Yes, he raises the dead, whatever. But Moses kept God, the almighty, all-powerful creator of the universe, from destroying half of Israel. You know, like, Moses could get shit done. Yeah.
That's a flex.
I mean, Jesus turned water and wine, but Moses struck a rock and had water come out of it. I mean, that's
against God's will, even.
Dang.
Yeah, Moses was a badass. Jesus was.
Oh, by the way, a group of pigs is called a drove, a team, a herd, or a sounder.
I've heard of a sounder before. Those I may have heard the other ones, but it doesn't stick in my head.
Female pigs. What is it? Sows. Yeah, sows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sow our corn and we sow our pigs because farming makes sense.
On this one. So what I would do is I'd say let's end the screen share for now, and
please end the screen share for the rest of the debate.
Let the audience have a little break from the screen shares. I'm going to hand it over to you, Travis. You want to take us down into some new territory, so if you don't mind, screen share for now there, Apollos.
Well,
and
there's also the fact
circle back. Don't worry.
That our side presented arguments and lines of evidence that have so far we've dealt with some of our opponents' openings, but our openings have gone largely untouched in this discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. What would you like and I do want to point out how this is really well done, Grayson. Like you pointed out, hey, we're focusing on your side, but we're not getting to the points we made. And it's really important that you actually, in a debate, you speak up about that, because it's okay if they don't want to address it, but people will forget unless you say, hey, they haven't addressed our point. So really well done, Grayson. And I completely agree. You're talking about all the reasons why we should believe this story or consider it true. We're not talking about the reasons why we shouldn't consider it true. They have to defend against your points as well.
Well, I thought it was a strange choice of like moderation to go back to Travis, because like, yes, Travis was not speaking a lot. Like it had been a long time since Travis had said something towards the open discussion, but at the same time, we started the whole open dialogue with Travis's arguments, and then we talked about his arguments for a long time, and then we moved on to his partner's arguments. Then we just finished dealing with those. It's like when we went back to Travis to go see, hey, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Travis? I'm like, well, no, hold on, like it's our turn to address our openings. Come on, like, it just felt like I was like, wait a minute, this is not adding up here.
It's almost like nobody actually cares what the atheists say. Yeah. They're just here to see, oh, well, let's talk about this minutia of this one belief system.
Well, the thing is, like, we were specifically, like, when I was approached with this debate, James was very specific. He said, I don't just want it to be a Christian versus atheist debate, like where the Christianity's on trial or we just deal with the Christian arguments. He said specifically, I want you, Grayson, to bring positive arguments for atheism and present the positive case for atheism. So I'm like, Well, we better freaking talk about that then, because that's what I freaking, I don't normally do that. That was abnormal. That's an approach I don't normally think about. So I'm like, we better at least have a debate about that.
Well, I think it's just more you've had a lot more to say. They've presented their arguments. You've had a lot more to say. But like, I don't mind going back to Travis, but you're right. It should be about your arguments, not new arguments for him to bring, like running back over it. I have no problem going back to Travis, and you probably don't either. It's not the fact that he's going back to Travis. It's the fact that we're going, well, do you have any other subject to bring up or any other argument to bring up apart from the ones that they have? It should be,
Yes.
let's go back to Travis to address your arguments because he hasn't talked in a while, and let's see, what he has to say. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay, and a while back I started a poll when you were asking what you should have said, Grayson, and now we have some results. With
Nice.
19 votes, you should have said 57% tapioca weasel.
Okay.
Following that, can you see all my slides? Got almost twice as many as can you see my presentation?
Oh, if that's a good one, because if they say yes, then I know I'm on the wrong screen. If you can see all my slides, then that's not good.
That's
That's
true.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's
I don't
perfect.
think we could see all your slides. Could we? Was that a thing?
Well,
I-
yeah, that's the issue. Was like if because you could see the whole slideshow on the left of the screen because it was like behind the stage, right? Like, I'm pretty sure anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I shortly after your opening, once it was revealed that it was stuck on the title screen the whole time, you got to scroll through many of them. Yeah, Andrew.
So even that
the
still
weasel
wouldn't count.
always wins.
Even then, so it was literally just the title screen and you couldn't see any of the others. So even then, oh my gosh. Well, anyways, next time I'm just throwing up my hands and I'm just gonna say tapioca weasel then. Thanks, chat.
Yeah, tapioca weasel.
That's the way the weasel hasn't even been here in a while, and he still wins every damn poll. Possibly because I keep offering it as an option, but
yeah, that's your problem right there. You know what? You need a producer, Grayson. That's basically where you're at. You need a producer.
No, that's very true, actually. Like, especially with like me wanting to do trash talk and everything, and I'm gonna be like, both my hands are gonna be occupied picking up trash and talking to people and everything. So I'm definitely gonna need help.
Yeah, don't we all? Don't we all?
Yeah. Although I must say, as many of you know, I've been doing occasional shows over on Skeptic Haven. They've asked me for help with a couple of shows, and on those shows there actually is a producer, and then I get frustrated because I don't have control of the buttons. I'm like, I want to play the intro video right here or whatever, So I guess it just be that way.
Whatever you want.
As
far as your arguments,
I listed 4 or 5 arguments. Would you want me to share my screen so you can see what they are again?
if you could just tell me, I'm sure I'm aware of them.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But I know of them.
So I had said
you can share if you'd like. Sorry, Grayson, to cut you off, but you can. I mean, of course, yeah, it's only fair because we've had screen shares on the other side for quite a bit. So if you want
an
to put it up for
excessive amount of screen share, yes.
And we can maybe talk about one of these.
Sorry, Mark.
I guess we did talk about the last one with the track record thing.
No, not you. It's Apollos doing it. So.
Peterson brought up arguments in his as well. One of the things we talked about.
Well, hold on. We're going to give the floor over to Grayson to outline his arguments, and then we'll.
No, it's okay. I mean, they can, if they want to respond to one of them, they can. But I think both of us touched on point number 2. I think about how these universally accessible truths, the way that they're distributed on the earth, it's not like it's not grouped together like geographically like this. Like everybody accepts that there's one sun because everybody can access that truth. And it tells us that it's supposed to be universally accessible, that God is real. So
so let me just read this. So God beliefs are probabilistically determined by one's birthplace, which one would expect of cultural norms, not of universally accessible truth. So
they're a socially constructed thing.
Yes. before like Islam and sort of Christianity sort of meshed in the Middle Ages, no one was being born in England and suddenly became a Muslim. That wasn't happening. I don't. Wow. Okay, it's been drawn from the underworld.
Really?
Hello,
Yeah. Wow.
Weasel.
Apparently, when we vote for him, he shows up.
Miracle.
Oh, and real quick, Mark, what I was talking about with the probabilistically determined was like, not like, I was saying like is likely determined or something like that. I wasn't saying like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not like the oxymoron of it's both probabilistic and determined. I was just trying to say like it's likely determined. Your religious beliefs are likely determined based on where you're born.
Yeah. No, I get it. I was just nitpicking a lot because that sort of it is an oxymoron if you're going for the sort of philosophical school. Things are either probability or they're
Yeah, it was not good
deterministic.
wording. Not good word
No, that's
choice.
okay. That's all right. And really, Grayson, I understood what you meant. And I think I said that at the time when I really was nitpicking a lot, kind of thing. But because I've had to, because in a debate, when you say something and someone's a bad faith interlocutor, they won't take a charitable interpretation of what you say. They will do exactly the same thing. Say, oh, look, he doesn't know what he's talking. It's really horrible. But this is a reason for the show. So if people are having conversations, these are kind of some of the pitfalls we have to watch out for. That and your presentation not going through.
Yeah, for sure. And on a
I'm
slightly
joking. Don't hate me, Grayson. I'm joking, mate. I'm joking.
on a slightly unrelated note, I want to point out, first of all, thank you, Dr. T, member for 19 months. Holy shit.
Wow.
I appreciate that.
Long-term weasel.
That yes, got the stamina, and that's amazing. But the relevant part to the debate is that even if it only happens once in all of eternity, we called upon the weasel and he appeared, which puts him all the percent ahead of the Jesus.
Uh-huh.
I see him in the chat trying to tell everyone that's just a coincidence, and I will say that that's exactly what the Messiah would say. He would be humble. So lisan al gaib.
I'm here to take names and win polls, and I'm all out of polls. Oh goodness. But I mean, the score, Jesus 0, Weasel 1. So
hey,
what can you do? There's some different ways you want to go with this. Obviously, we want to avoid the genetic fallacy. But are you saying, because we could say that, for example, Christopher C. Knight.
That's not the genetic fallacy.
No. I don't understand where we want to avoid the genetic fallacy. I'm not sure. Is he saying he's not going to give an answer that plays into the genetic? So genetic fallacy, for people that are unaware out there, it's basically saying that the origin of some sort of information makes it basically is saying so it's not true. So a genetic fallacy may be saying something like, well, Grayson got his information from the American school system, therefore it's wrong, kind of thing. That's the genetic fallacy, saying that the origin of that information automatically makes it false. So the genetic fallacy is basically just the origins of something is what makes it true or false, where it's coming from.
The only thing that I could think of that he might be alluding to with that disclaimer of his with the genetic fallacy is like, because we're talking about the way that Christian belief is distributed globally. And like the only thing I can think of is that if we were to jettison the idea that, well, hey, if the Christian God exists, it should be universally accessible or self-evident in some way to people. If we just jettison that idea and then say, well, just because the knowledge of the Christian God was given to a small group of, Iron Age Jews or whatever, like, and then spread throughout the world that way, that by itself doesn't mean that it's false. And like, that's true. Like, if that had been my argument, but that wasn't. Obviously, my
That's
argument
not.
is that we
Yeah.
we should expect that it should be universally accessible truth or self-evident, and so
Mm.
that lots of people would come to that belief if it was true, because it specifically says things in the Bible that would make us think that divine hiddenness should not be expected.
Well, yeah, and the whole idea that the morality of Christianity is written on one's heart, i.e., it's an intrinsic property of a person. It should these values should arise. The specific Christian values should arise independently of one another, but they don't. They have to be shared. And I think it does also play into your other point, which that these things constantly schism. That it's less likely to be a true, like, because if you get something like mathematics, for instance, it doesn't really schism that much. Like it basically, the same principles will be discovered by the people over here and the people over there. And I think that was your point. And it's a very good point that, it seems like facts about reality will arise in different cultures at different times, independent of having to be passed around. They will independently arise. Religion, not so much. It has to be taught, which is weird because people like Ken Ham, they're like, oh, babies are born with a knowledge of God. It's sort of like, so why do you have to teach them about it? Like it's so wild. Like it is so wild.
I would love somebody to ask Ken Ham that question. It's like, well, hey Ken, if babies are born with this knowledge of Jesus, then it's unnecessary for you to have to brainwash them.
Well, then why is indoctrination a thing? And why is inquisition and sort of this hunting down people that don't believe and making them suffer or throwing them out of the church? Like why do there have to be this imposition put upon people who do not believe in the religion throughout the centuries? And I use imposition kind of loosely because it's been everything from ostracizing non-believers to burning them at the frigging stake. So, why is that necessary if this is a fundamental truth?
Oh, also, I am also rabies vaccinated. Just FYI, based on what's going on with the chat.
Okay.
Good to know.
Okay.
Good to know.
So
Rabies
if there's any
frigging
rabid
horrifying.
dogs, if there's any rabid dogs attacking anyone in chat, know that you can call upon me. Just if you need me,
rabies is one of the things that horrifies me. So is things like prions and stuff. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yes.
Horrifying.
I actually like James Tour just made a video about like amyloids and stuff, addressing some of my arguments in my videos, and
Mhm.
like he was making points about like especially people in chat were making points about, oh, amyloids, they would decay so fast, and it's like, dude, like if you knew anything about prion diseases, like you would not be making that argument, because like literally whenever they treat somebody with a prion disease, like whenever they treat them surgically, you cannot just sterilize the surgical
Right.
implements. It's not
Yeah.
enough to degrade the prions. The prions are still there after the standard sterilization that goes on in like the SPD departments of a hospital. They literally have to either quarantine them for 10 years or just throw out the surgical implements. Like they have to get rid of them because the prions are that hard to get rid of. That's how stable they are. They're terrifying. They turn your brain into goo.
Isn't it I don't know. It strikes me as really weird that like these are basically just malformed proteins. They're twisted around the wrong way. Shouldn't our enzymes be able to just shred them into their component parts? Like why are they so resistant when our stuff is so fragile? It's almost like the chirality of life went the wrong way. We're breakable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just like nothing. I don't think we have enzymes that are specifically like designed to target misfolded like amyloids in that way. Like, because like tons and tons of proteins have this sort of amyloid shape to them, like the beta pleated sheet shape. So it's like it would be really hard to make something that could specifically target the misfolds because they spread like memes. Like once a misfolded protein comes in contact with like a regularly folded protein, the regularly folded one will then adopt the misfold and will start like it just spreads like they spread like they're viruses, even though they're
Well, that's
even less
even
of a living
worse.
thing. They're even less of a living thing than a virus is, but they spread and they replicate their folding information pattern. They replicate that information just like a virus does, without any
It's so
DNA.
wild. And
Yeah,
it do-
no DNA at all.
and you'd think it would work the other way too, that when they encounter a properly folded protein, half the time they would adopt the correct fold, but that's not what happens, and it's fucking weird.
I think that might be a outcome of concentration. I'm not sure because amyloids tend to clump together into like plaques where they're all misfolded. So it might just be that the concentration of the misfolded one is just so much more than any of the healthy ones that just happen to wander in contact with the big old plaque buildup. That might be it, but that would just be my speculation as to why.
We need more research.
Well, apparently,
Yeah.
Anja said, does Australia have rabies? No, it doesn't, which is one of the reasons why our biosecurity is just off the chain. But there are bats that carried it. But, the amount of bats you see versus the amount of dogs is a bit, a bit weird.
Hell yeah. I've
On
seen
that note,
Australian
guys,
Yeah.
I'm having a really great time. I really want to be able to finish this, but I did already have other commitments, so I think I have
No
to
problem,
dip
mate.
out. But I'm like, yeah, I'm loving this. I'm definitely gonna be going back to listen to the rest of this later, as should everybody listening. And if they haven't liked the video, come on, like the stream. It helps Ember and Mark out a ton. What are y'all people doing? Thank you guys for having me on. And till next time.
Yeah, thanks for
All right,
popping
Grayson,
by.
take
Always
care.
good to see you.
Great to see you. Yeah, fantastic to see you, mate.
All right. And of course, if you're somehow not subscribed to Grayson, there's a link to his channel
Definitely.
in the description as well. And also Planet Peterson for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get Grayson's link for you for all of the people out there. I hope he does something on the amyloid stuff because like his presentations on amyloid theory and all that kind of stuff, it's so good. It is so good. And I have learnt a lot watching him. So definitely, if you're not subscribed to Grayson, definitely give him a try because he explains things in such a good way.
Same. I have never had a conversation with Grayson where I didn't learn something interesting, including tonight, like the virality of these fucking prions.
I'm not sure I 100% understood it, but you're much better on biology, and Grayson's way better on biology than I am. He did a really great video recently on Sabine Hofstetter and the problems with her. Just went to the heart of the matter really well. Highly recommend. Absolutely fantastic. Like it basically was like, yes, this is who she is, what she's doing, why is she doing it. We also have thoughts about that. So I wasn't aware of, I knew that she was doing stuff for dramatic purposes, but I wasn't aware of the whole thing. So that was a fantastic video for me to go, oh, that's the problem. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely recommend Grayson.
Hell yeah. I haven't had a chance to check that one out myself. I've been working a lot and doing other stuff, but it's on my list because I haven't paid attention to Sabine since she pulled that. First of all, for anybody who doesn't know, she's a physicist, but she's been opining on cultural matters, and she got into trouble a couple of years back when she made a making sense out of trans something. And she opens the video by saying, on one hand, we've got people who want to exterminate a whole group of people. On the other hand, we've got people who want to be allowed to live. And what's a normal person like you and me to make of this? What do you mean? You're like portraying people who just want to not be exterminated as extremists equal to the people who want to murder them. What are you doing? So
and let's face it, like it doesn't really affect you. If people want to live as a woman and be a woman, it doesn't affect you. Like, how does it affect you? It doesn't. It's so minimal for the benefits it brings to them. Who cares? I don't understand why it's this big deal. You really have to be a conservative person basically going, oh, this society is going to fall apart if we don't have these clear designations of male and female. Oh, no, it's not. Get over yourself. Society will continue onwards with gay people in it, with trans people in it. It will continue. Relax, my guy. It's fine. Oh, the birth rates are dropping. It's fine.
Oh no,
If
we're
necessary,
vastly overpopulated.
you know, we're vastly overpopulated for one, and they go, oh, but certain amount of people will fit to this square kilometer. We're not talking about how many people. We're talking about the resources around them. Okay, we're looking at resources here. Number two, if we're going low in population, we've got things like IVF, and we've got things that we can do. Just relax, my guy. Just live your fucking life. Don't tell other people what to do.
You'd think the freedom crowd would be down with it, but digression, tangent. It's what we do here. As a few people have pointed out, at a certain point, you start to think people come here for the tangents, and that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
He has a really good work on that presents Christ as the divine logos, and so it kind of
Now I broke it. I broke it goodly, betterly, bestly. I don't know. Maybe we should go back to the other view.
Maybe we should tangent again. That was going fine.
That's right.
Maybe.
The tangents weren't good.
Yeah.
I'll reload it. 123.38. Bigify.
But Alex O'Connor event that is going to
No, that's not where we were.
Nope.
23.38. That's as close as I can
expect
get.
of cultural norms, not of universally accessible truth. So there's some different ways you want to go with this. Obviously, we want to avoid the genetic fallacy. But are you saying, because we could say that, for example, Christopher C. Knight, he has a really good work on that presents Christ as the
at the same spot. Why? Okay, not quite at the same spot. It's at 123.30. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, whatever.
Are you doing it off YouTube, or are you doing it from file?
This one's from YouTube. Let me see if I
Okay.
have the file handy.
I don't know. I can probably do it if necessary. I think I just ran it from YouTube, to be honest with you. I think that's what I did.
Yeah,
but I can present it if necessary.
I started from a local file on part 1, and occasionally that runs into trouble, and so we switched to the YouTube version, and just difficulties. Let's see, debates folder. Where is it? Open with Chrome. Okay, let's share this, and 123.
It'll be fine, people. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of extra behind the scenes-ism. Okay, let's see if this goes. Yeah, I did switch it over. Okay.
For example, Christopher C. Knight, he has a really good work on that presents Christ as the divine logos, and so it kind of incorporates these different religious claims, like being in line with Christianity. Now, this is a bit controversial. Not everyone's going to find this plausible. I'm just mentioning a scholar who kind of takes a different kind of route with this, and he will say that if the divine logos, which is the word, Christ, the divine wisdom of God, and so on.
I'm not sure how he's using logos here, because logos usually refers to like logic and reason and rationality. It's sort of like the evidence that you have for it. So I'm not sure exactly how he's using this. So usually, I thought in Christianity it's usually like revelation kind of thing, the divine revelation. So he's sort of saying, his argument seems to be getting at, well, Jesus is the knowledge itself, and it's like, well, when we talk about logos, it's more like the logic that you're using. So that's really weird. And I get that Christians use it in a different way, but I'm not sure what point he's making here that, doesn't lobos mean dog or something in Spanish? I don't know. So like he seems to make that the whole point is that if people had this divine revelation, then it should occur, say, in a Muslim country, and suddenly they believe in Jesus, even though they had no knowledge of it. Like we shouldn't see this, it's more like that God belief is transmitted like a meme, and I mean that in the Richard Dawkins sense, a meme being an idea that is passed around by people. It seems to be transmitted more like that than any kind of divine spontaneous revelation that anybody gets. So it doesn't address that, because you're just sort of saying, hey, well, if God's the logos, it's the revelation. It goes counter to that point. Why does this revelation never happen to some guy in the Indonesia, for instance, raised in all Muslim household, right? That being the most populous Muslim nation. Why does it never happen there? Why does it never happen, spontaneously in a child of atheists will suddenly be a Christian? It doesn't happen like that. What happens is another person says, hey, have you heard the good word? And convince them that it is true.
Good news, everyone.
Good news. Yeah.
It's such a wild thing. So I did a regular pre-recorded produced video a few days ago, and just the whole concept of like God sent us his son to be murdered, and that redeems humanity. I'm like,
yeah,
who thought this was a good plan? Oh my goodness. Oh,
the cosmos and imbued it with divine wisdom. That's sort of like how we see convergence in biology. These certain moralistic and religious type of truths, we would see them sort of converge even through one's different cultural conditioning and so on.
Yeah.
So they would kind of converge into truths similar to Christianity, like,
so
like the value of love. Okay.
Travis, why don't we see that happening then? Why is it that 2,000 years?
I just want to throw out there that I love how Grayson starts to talk and then just holds up his finger. Like,
maybe
it's
it's a cricket thing. That's when the umpire calls you out. You've been like caught out or something. He's like, you're out. Get out of here. He's just trying to like not let Travis ramble. I think he is interrupting, but Travis he does ramble a bit. Maybe he should let him. I would like to see Grayson, and this is really nitpicky, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with what he's doing, but he should give him more rope, because I think he's going to oh, hey Vandy. I think he's going to really sort of say some stuff that Grayson can take apart. Like if he keeps going and like sort of says, hey, we see this divine revelation happen all over the place. Well, we don't. That's the thing. We don't. We only see this divine revelation when someone has already been convinced. And the church relies on that. They say, hey, you must have faith before you get the revelation. Why is that?
Well, okay, so I will have a counterexample for that.
Wow, you are so loud.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here, I'll turn on
your
automatic adjust mic setting.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
and smooth.
yeah.
So smooth.
So, unfortunately, Windows likes to just like change this. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Windows does what Windows does. Look,
am I right?
Windows works in mysterious ways.
They open and close by themselves by divine magisteria,
Right.
something.
I'm glad you pointed it out, though. Maya, even though she is a goddess, which was the point that I was going to make, was that I do actually have interactions with the divine at least once a week. It works out okay. But she never, even though she's a goddess with magical divine powers, she always assumes that whenever like I'm really quiet or really loud, that it's just on her end, and I'm like, no, Maya. If I'm really loud, everybody else thinks I'm really loud too.
You know, it's so hard to tell. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, there's times we watch a video where we can hear it just fine from inside the studio, and either it's blasting across YouTube or it's, you know, it's technology. I blame Chris Mallard spreading his tech demons around like crotch cooties.
No. Okay, hold on. I joined the stream. Okay, my job is to be the blamed weasel. Okay, do you guys not watch Bad Science Sunday? Okay, whenever anything goes wrong, Maya is on it. She's like, it's the weasel's fault, and she's not wrong.
Well, you know, I don't blame weasels for much, to be honest with you. Maybe some you know, some eaten bunnies here and there, but you know, that's fine. That's
the occasional shutdown of the Large Hadron Collider. You know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Was that weasels? I thought it was squirrels.
It was either weasels or ferrets, and I think it was weasels because ferrets are almost by construction domesticated. Like that's kind of what makes a ferret a ferret.
Okay.
I think.
Maybe. I had pet ferrets when I was very small, but I was so small I didn't learn much about them. Just
yeah. So they think it was a weasel. It was a small mammal, very likely to be a weasel, gnawed through a power cable. So yeah,
we are a proud people.
Yeah,
indeed.
Weasels don't let anybody else discover anything about the universe. They want to do it themselves. So they sabotage the Large Hadron Collider. You know what? That's a dick move, quite frankly. I mean, holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it did suffer the consequences because it got fried.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I'm looking at it now. It was absolutely fried. Well, it was
like there's a picture of it. They're not even sure what it was because it got fried so bad. I think.
Oh no.
Right. Oh no! There was another incident in 2009. A bird dropped. A bird dropped a baguette onto the electrical system, causing a short circuit.
Oh, that's
the weasels are sending in the birds.
The weasels have an air force.
It was a French bird. Oh wow!
We have
dropped
an air
the
force
baguette,
and we carry rabies.
There you
rabies
go.
Has gone airborne.
Yeah, and if you do get bitten by an animal, run to the emergency department and get a rabies shot because holy crap, that is horrifying.
Well, it doesn't have to be a mammal, right? Like only mammals carry rabies.
Right. Yeah.
Like if mosquitoes ever start carrying rabies, the human population is going to be like,
yeah. Well, malaria is bad enough, to be honest with you. So
yeah, but
yellow fever. There's all manner of mischief and death. But I mean, like, if this cute little critter started charging at you, where do you? I mean, I almost would let him bite me.
I probably would let him bite me, and then I'd go to the emergency room and be like, I guess I'm gonna have to get a whole bunch of shots because I don't want rabies.
I think that's an ermine, actually. I think that might be ermine. It's a kind of it's kind of
a marmot or a stoat. There's like 8 different names for.
No, marmots are different. Marmots are like chipmunks and squirrels and stuff. Stoats and weasels are muscelids, I believe. They're not the same family.
Mustelids.
Mustelids, yeah, mustelids.
Yeah.
Oh, fancy. That's why they hang out with birds that carry baguettes, you know.
Indeed.
Let's go. This Jesus guy went over here. We got this Christian religion, and then ever since that happened, it's continued to fragment into smaller and smaller groups. We've got Mormonism spinning off that we've talked about. We've got spin-offs, and that happens in every single religion to the same degree. We don't see any. Hey, wait a minute, this religion's behaving differently than all the other ones. Maybe it's true. Like the dynamics, the way that religions develop and change over time are the same for all of them.
So if you were to ask me that, now Apollos may have something different, but if you were to ask me that, I would say, well, that kind of highlights the value of being Eastern Orthodox. that holds to, traditions that have continued unbroken since, Christ and the apostles, because in fact, and I could even bring up an argument that like a foundational being of a certain nature would have some reason to want to communicate his truths to people of all times and places. And so I think that really makes sense out of something.
So Eastern Orthodox, I've been hearing more and more a lot about them recently because they've kind of come up on the scene. Eastern Orthodox are a funny one. They basically are the so essentially when the Roman Empire fragmented into East and West Roman empires, essentially they were the eastern side, and Catholicism, of course, based in Rome, was the western side. So it essentially was the first major schism between the religion, and the Catholics, they did not do the Eastern Orthodoxy any favors at all. They absolutely slaughtered them. But the traditions that the Eastern Orthodox have, they go back as far as the Catholics. Like, we're not talking about sort of this oh, well, it's only you guys that go back that far. They both claim the Holy Fathers, the apostolic tradition, the early church fathers. They both claim them in their lineage.
They basically go back just as far as each other.
And it's a weird argument to make in the first place.
Ethiopians only go back a little bit less far, I think. Like, there's a lot of these denominations that go back. Like, I didn't realize Coptics were still around until I got lost in a Wikipedia hole when I was looking at the status quo that they have at that the immovable ladder. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Not just from that.
At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there is a status quo where that whole property, all of it, in order to make any changes, you have to have the unanimous agreement of 6 different denominations, including the Roman Catholics, the Coptics, the Ethiopians, the Eastern Orthodox, and then I think maybe also the Greek Orthodox, and then I'm forgetting one of them. I can't remember. And there's a ladder. You can walk down the street in Jerusalem and look at this ladder, and it's been leaning up against the side of this building since the middle of the 1800s because somebody put it there to work on painting a thing or something, and then left it there, and nobody can move it. And when people move anything, a guy moved a chair 20 years ago, and there was a brawl that broke out. All the monks started punching each other, and they had to go to the hospital. It's crazy.
What, Jesus didn't heal them? That's so unexpected.
Well, but he died.
Well, shit. I mean, he could fix that too if he really wanted to. But it's weird for him to make this appeal that our religion is older than these other. Judaism is older than that. If being old makes it more true, then you still lose, buddy.
Yeah, and the thing is that the Catholics will say they're the oldest because technically the Catholic Church was around, but we're really talking about one church that was Catholic and Orthodox that split. So they're both as old as one another, really. So but both say that they're the oldest ones and have the best traditions. So he's sort of saying, hey, it's valuable to have this among Orthodox, this older church with the most valuable traditions. I don't know what flavor of Christian Apollos is, but he probably disagrees with that. If he's a Catholic, he'll be going, no, actually, it's the Catholics that are older. And of course, they fight about this constantly. And it's weird that we have this at the moment. People, and I just want to mention this because it has been on my radar, that people in this sort of Orthodox tradition have been saying, hey, let's band together because even though we have differences, we can, get rid of OnlyFans and stop all of this stuff happening because we're all Christians and all agree on it. The whole point is that if they do get into power, if they take power, the Orthodox will want the patriarchs, the ones controlling things. The patriarchs are the ones that they say are descended or have a history of from the apostles, and the Catholics will want the Pope, the papacy, to be in. So all it will do is a team up until they fight among themselves. So like we're just in this never-ending cycle of these religions banding together, putting somebody in power, and then they just fight among themselves. It's pointless. Like, this is why we have secular things. So it's so that no one religion is treated better than the other, because they can't decide on who deserves the right to have power. They just think that God does, and they were the ones chosen. Their religion is the right one, which is just exhausting.
Yeah, it makes me think of a thing Matt Dillahunty posed many years ago, where he was debating with like several different Protestant people, or they were all trying to debate him at once. And he was like, this is crazy. You all sort out which version of your faith you want to present to me. And once you've decided on one, I will discuss that one. And he's never heard back from them, strangely enough.
Yeah. Because they can't. The whole point is that when we're arguing about things like science, we have a methodology for weeding out who's right and who's wrong. And there's certainly discussions and arguments, but at some point, the body of evidence will rule out one of them, and the person will have to go, okay, well, I'm wrong. There is no methodology among the church. Like, you ask what their methodology is, and it is, well, no, I'm right. There's no way to actually show it. There's no process. There's no, well, this is how we discover who is right and who is wrong. It's just, well, if you read the Bible like the way I'm reading it, you'll know I'm right.
I mean, Mark.
Great. Yeah.
I have a book.
Okay, well.
You gotta show me in my book.
I think I've got Lord of the Rings around here somewhere. That's a book too.
It's true. But you have to hold it the right way. The approved presidential mechanism.
The improved. Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh, dude, like the fact that man started selling Bibles is just wow.
Oh my God, did he? Fucking
yeah.
They're it's such a freaking. So Lee Greenwood, the guy whose entire income is based on one song that was like a hit for 2 weeks in the 80s or some shit, he put out his own Bible, the Lee Greenwood God Bless America Bible, that includes the King James Version and a nice leather cover, and also the lyrics to God Bless America, the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the amendments. And that, so it's like an extra cool Bible because it's got all this American shit in there. So Trump took those Bibles and took the cover off and put one on that says Trump instead, and he's selling those as the Trump Bible.
Well, I mean, that man will sell anything.
Literally true. It's just, I'm so disgusted I don't even have words, but it's old news at this point. It's like C.S. Lewis republishing Lord of the Rings, you know.
He didn't do that, did he?
No.
Because I'm pretty sure that Christopher Tolkien would come down and like,
oh yeah,
destroy him.
Actually, I'm not even sure who. Now, you know, theists have made a big discourse over the fact that Tolkien and Lewis knew each other, but I'm not sure who died first.
Tolkien died.
Tolkien, I think.
In the 50s. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and C.S. Lewis died in the 60s. Yeah,
that's what I thought. But C.S. Lewis, I mean, I didn't.
Oh no, actually, Tolkien died in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
73.
Well,
yeah.
See,
okay.
No idea.
Weirdly, even though I knew Tolkien made it through like the midway point of the 20th century, I just have it in my head, this idea that C.S. Lewis died in like 1819 because his arguments are so not sophisticated.
Yeah. There it's less surprising for C.S. Lewis though than it is for somebody like Arthur Conan Doyle. Like Arthur Conan Doyle, if you only read his works, you might think that he had like decent reasoning capabilities because, like, you know, Sherlock Holmes, like blah 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 blah. But as we, I'm sure, have all learned from Matt Dillahunty, No.
The fairies, though, I mean,
fairies.
In fairness, as he
In
correctly
fairiness.
pointed out, yes, Photoshop would not be invented for several decades more. So therefore, the photos have to be real, right?
Yeah, but like, what about crayons though? Eh? Yeah.
Did they have crayons? I don't know.
Well, they certainly
Like-
had like they had pencils and shit. So I don't know about crayons, but they would have had like pastels and whatnot. But the fairy things, those were done by some kids.
Yes, and they weren't even that well done. They were just
No
cutouts, basically.
Yeah,
It
you
was
didn't even
really
need
bad.
like Photoshop. Like they were doing photography tricks at the time. Ansel Adams wasn't just an amazing photographer; he also engineered an analog version of the photography tricks we would today call Photoshop. You know, exposure stacking for one thing. He would expose multiple plates of a landscape set to different exposure settings, so you could see both the clouds in the sky, not have a blown out sky, but also the shadows under the mountains. They wouldn't be like just black. And he'd stack the exposures, which was cheating, but you could do it in an analog fashion in a darkroom.
It's not cheating.
No, I mean, I think it's being fucking brilliant at using the tools available to you. But if you do the same thing in Photoshop today, well, maybe not today. More like the late 90s, early 2000s. People would say
if you do it nowadays, it's not that it's cheating. It's just not special. It's just anybody can do it. Like, but if you, I mean, like if you're really good at Photoshop, you can get a job being really good at Photoshop. There are a lot of jobs like that.
if you're really good at Photoshop or passably good and have the right connection. In fact, with many things, especially artistic related things, the connections matter a whole lot more than the ability. I mean, the worst book you've ever read, somebody decided to publish. Somebody read that manuscript and said, you know what? This is awful, but I owe their uncle a favor, so approved, you know?
Well, and that person may be the same person, the writer and the publisher in some of those cases. So, you know, vanity projects are a thing.
Now, yes, I'm speaking more traditionally, but yeah, it's just sadly the vanity stuff has gotten a little out of hand lately.
Andrew Christofferson is complaining in the chat that not if you don't have a degree, just get a famous name and then just, you know, fail upwards.
Yeah, I mean, have you considered being born as a Jenner, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, I'm you know, my name is nowhere near as big as the Jenners, but you know, I don't even know how to read. So
I mean, sometimes just being a weasel is enough.
Sometimes.
Holy tradition, which you see in Greek Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism. Now, I think it favors Orthodoxy more than.
But there's so little.
Why does it favor
there's a
Orthodoxy? Why does it favor? Like, yes, you believe that, but why?
Well,
this goes back to what Grayson was saying about that God beliefs are probabilistic about where you are born. Like they're basically a product of the likely religion that you were indoctrinated into when you were young, or you know, who you came into contact with, rather than any novel sort of, you know, creation of this religious belief that plays into it. Why are you that religion rather than Roman Catholic? Because if you were born in you know, Mexico, for instance, you would be Catholic.
Yeah.
It's a fun, but only if you were born in Mexico in the last 500 years. If you were born 600 years ago, weirdly, no Jesus appears to you.
Right.
Very strange.
Smallpox, though,
God
totally
out there
appears to you.
Well, who does?
Smallpox.
Oh, yes. when those fucking pink people with the pale faces show up and start handing out blankets.
Yeah.
Then who is a revelatory God, then it doesn't really
Sure.
make sense to us that the religious concepts that people have and religious practices and taboos and even the concept of God for all these people all throughout history has been completely contradictory. There's so little standardization behind any of it.
Right. So I think this really gets into a good point too of how we do evidence for our theory and whether or not some, contingent observation is evidence against our theory. And so given this sort of axiological view that I'm going with of an axiologically supreme being who kind of narrates this grand story, what we do is we look at what obtains on the whole. So we don't want to necessarily hyper focus on some temporary time t. We're looking at what, the narrative entails on the whole. And
Okay,
so
so
on this, please, this is important, I promise. And so what obtains on the whole is that all creatures will come to know Christ, or God as their Redeemer, their Savior, and they will come to look back on their lives and find it non-regrettable. That they will come to endorse what they've gone through as being what formed their identity. And so, for some contingent observation, we're not just going to look at what focuses what happens over here, but kind of what obtains on what does the narrative entail altogether.
Wow, we're just going
interesting.
to add on to. I mean, that's not only not scripture. That's not. I mean, maybe in the Eastern Orthodox, it's doctrine that I've just never heard of before. But it's what I always get him confused. Eisegesis or exegesis. But he's putting his own shit into the story.
Not necessarily. So axiological is basically about values, right? So he's basically saying that we have a valuable religion, like it has some sort of value it provides with us. It's not exactly pragmatic, but it sort of says that I guess there's some moral values or some sort of intrinsic value to this to its practitioners, which is weird the way that he's saying it, because that really doesn't have anything to do with whether it's true. So sort of saying, hey, we want to come at this in an axiological way means I'm going to ignore your sort of argument that we would expect it to be a man-made creation that is passed between people, and sort of say, hey, we're going to look at this as, is this valuable to the people that have it? Which is weird. It's just weird. I don't see how it gets at his argument at all. It's sort of a non sequitur.
Yeah, I'm more hung up on the all creatures will come to understand. The whole after you're dead, you'll realize all the suffering was good actually, but you won't know until you get to see the whole narrative. And
Yeah, the general statement that it is profound that people will look back at like what they've gone through and been like, this was really important for making me. That's literally true of everybody under all circumstances ever. Some people will like take that and be like, that was good, silver lining or whatnot. But everybody knows that like the things you've gone through make you the person you are today. It's not special and neat.
Yeah, it's kind of like
the question is, why should anybody, if somebody finds Islam valuable, why should that not be true? Like when you're looking at sort of so when we're saying, and the we've got to remember the question of the debate, that the proposition of the debate is not Christianity is important or Christianity is valuable. Even Christianity is nice or comforting. It's nothing like that. It is what's true, atheism or Christianity. So when you're talking about that, you're not talking about axiology. You're talking about the ontology, and as a subset, the epistemology, how you get to that, whether that is true or not. So really, he's gone completely off topic and said, well, Christians find it valuable. Great.
Yeah, it was a lot of nothing that was said.
Well, it's not in a different debate. It might have been something. If the debate was, is Christianity good for society, for instance, it would be perfectly on topic, absolutely on topic. It's just for this one, I don't see where the perceived value or the value that may be intrinsically there, I don't know, has anything to do with the truth, like the state of truth about whether its claims are true or not. Like I have no idea.
So Travis,
Sort of a teleological perspective.
Yeah, I just have a quick
Okay.
question, because it sounded to me like you were just saying like that you can't conceive of anything falsifying your idea of a God. Like, is there?
Oh, no.
You were just saying that, like, you know, this evidence.
You're
Have we
muted.
stopped for a reason? You're muted, Ember.
Damn it, my buttons. I wanted to stop it because the way he said that, when Grayson said, "Are you saying that there's no way you can falsify your idea?" and Travis started to hedge, that implies that Travis thinks there's a way that you can falsify his idea of a God, and I would really love to hear what that is.
Yeah. Well, the way that he's sort of, I think that what the reason Grayson said that is because he sort of said, "Oh, we want everybody to know the truth after life, and after they will find it out," kind of thing. That is an unfalsifiable proposition, right? Just sort of saying, "Hey, you will get the answers after you pass away." That is so unfalsifiable.
It's unfalsifiable now. It's like, if they're right, then by dying and like going through the stuff that they say will happen after we die, it will be falsified. That's true about us too, but it's not helpful because,
well, it doesn't matter, because unfalsifiability is about the now. Like, for instance,
right,
Russell's teapot, right? Like you say, there's a teapot around Jupiter, and there's no way to falsify that, right? Like, at some point we may have space travel, we might learn the truth, right? Whether there is actually, in fact, you know, we may have the amount of sensors that would need to detect a teapot, and then we can say, "Hey, that's been falsified," but we don't have it now, and that's the point. So it may be falsifiable in the future, i.e. after I die, but to us, there's no way to falsify that. There's no experiment we can carry out. There's no possible way we can do that.
And to build onto that, because every video is somebody's first video, that means we don't have any good reason to believe it's true either.
Right.
Falsifiability, when I first like heard the term and learned about it, I think I was in high school, and it's a rough choice of vocabulary, in my opinion, for the idea it's trying to get across, because they were like, an idea has to be falsifiable. To me, that means like it has to be, you have to be able to prove it's not true, which, but like in a concrete way, that can only be true if it is not true, right?
Right.
Yeah. Like
that's not what it means. It means that if hypothetically it were not true, there would be something that you could do in order to determine that. There would be a test that you could perform, which could, in principle, hypothetically, disprove it. I don't know why I'm explaining this. This was a thing that confused me when I was like 15, and I'm, most of us aren't 15. So.
I think it was really worked upon by Karl Popper, who sort of said that in order for any meaningful knowledge to be gained, it has to have some sort of criteria that if it failed that criteria, it would be proven wrong. And if it doesn't fail that criteria, we believe that is true until such a time it does. But having that criteria is the important part. You could make it like, if that criteria is out, we can't possibly test that criteria, then we can never have knowledge of whether it's true or not. It becomes meaningless to say that it's true or not true. And therefore, it's not that we say, hey, it can't be falsified, so it is false. We basically say it can't be falsified, so we don't believe it's true. We dismiss it out of hand and say, well, we can't test that at the moment. It's kind of this idea that until you can do that, you've got no way to actually tell if something is true or false, because anyone can just say, hey, there's this thing, it can't be tested, but it does exist. And that could be done for literally anything, like, a magic giraffe or, an invisible porpoise or anything at all. So we have to have that falsifiability criteria for it to overcome in order to even talk about it being a thing. It's more that it's meaningless without it. And I've never heard a falsification criteria for a god, ever.
Well, I have heard some, but the goalposts have been moved for centuries. Things like, oh, well, just go up above the clouds and you'll see it. Okay, we've done that. Didn't see it. Oh, well, he's actually out in space and, all that crap. Those goalposts, they keep zooming around.
Well, but that's where you change the criteria. When it fails the criteria, you just change the criteria. And that's sort of, I think Sagan talked about that being one of the ways that that a claim is not true, when that falsification criteria keeps getting further and further away.
It's a pretty strong indicator, like Hoyle ran into with his various versions of steady state, how it kept shifting the goalpost back. It's a bit of a problem. But
what a character!
Oh, he was something.
He was, oh man, very few people in the history of astrophysics more interesting than Hoyle.
Well, it's not like he wasn't like, this is the thing. Just because you as a scientist, you have a theory or a hypothesis and you're wrong about it, doesn't mean you're not contributing to science.
Oh, like, he contributed tons to science.
It doesn't. And this is the thing that actually Grayson's video, again, I'll mention it, about Sabine Hofstetter. She's sort of saying, hey, this science isn't producing anything. And it's like, but that isn't what it's about. It's about having these hypotheses, testing them, and things come from that. There's spin-off technologies. There's all these things discovered because someone had an idea and they were wrong about it, essentially.
Yeah.
But in trying to find out if it was wrong, they actually found out something about our reality, and this is how science works. I brought up the example of modern Wi-Fi. The reason why we have Wi-Fi is because the interleaving and all the strategies we use to stop the echoing bounce of signal was developed by the CSIRO in Australia, who were trying to find black holes, and they wanted to stop the signals from bouncing around so they could find microscopic black holes. They didn't, but they came up with a series of techniques that allowed us to develop modern Wi-Fi.
Yeah, same thing.
I did not know that. That's
story.
Yeah.
With the discovery of the CMB, it had been predicted for ages, and then you've got these guys working for Bell Labs who are just trying to get the fucking background noise out of their big fucking cornucopia thing.
It was predicted, but if you had polled all the people on the planet who were like interested in that vague thing, most of them would not have listed it as like a thing that they were like looking for. And the ones that would have kind of probably would have done it as like a side thought. When Penzias and Wilson did their measurements and spent a fucking year going over every little bit and making sure it wasn't the fault of a weasel that was taking a crap inside of their antenna, they did. And like, yes, you can find publications for that did predict the CMB, but it was not the publication that really predicted it came out while they were trying to like figure their stuff out. It's a very fascinating story, because it's actually kind of astonishing that it wasn't more well understood broadly that this would be the thing that we should look for.
Well, I don't think anybody
was in the literature.
Should look for it. Like, it was predicted, but people were just like, meh, whatever, and
but
it should be there. But
if somebody in the 50s had been like, we should look for this doesn't seem like it would be that hard to look for, and it wouldn't have been, and they had gone and looked for it, they would have won a Nobel Prize, just like Penzias and Wilson won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it makes me wonder what else has technically been predicted, but nobody's really thought to look for. And and because of the way so much of what we understand and engage with in the sciences is based on the way it's presented to us when we're being taught about it, there are things that will be a really big deal in the future, that we're not really paying much attention to now because nobody made a big deal out of them, you know?
Yeah. I can think of an example. Dark energy. So dark energy was discovered and stuff in 1998. But the language and the mathematics for describing dark energy, which is basically just saying, it could just be a cosmological constant. It fits right into Einstein's equations. He put it in there at the beginning and then later called it his greatest blunder. But that exact term in the equations is,
right.
if it's, if that term has a certain value, then you should be able to go and check and look at the expanding universe. 1998 is when we discovered that the universe's expansion is accelerating. And it was very much because the whole idea back then was that Einstein had added in this term, and then it was his greatest blunder because he was adding in that term to keep everything in a steady state model, and it actually was expanding. Turns out he should have left the term in there and been like, okay, well, so
It's
far
expanding.
we don't have, it was like, so far we don't have any value or anything on this, but if you're able to perform these measurements and make this plot, then that's how it'll behave.
That's one of the remarkable things, and I have to give Lemaitre credit for this, because even though Hubble was looking at the data and Slipher before him showing the galactic recession, and even though Einstein's math showed that should be the case, well, Einstein's math showed it should be collapsing, but
or expanding.
It's
one
just
of the two.
Which way do you go with it? It was still an intellectual leap to say that it is expanding, because that invites all these counterintuitive notions like we still get today. What is the universe expanding into if it is all of space?
Right.
And so
Very
you
hard
can't
thing to
blame Einstein
understand.
for it not crossing his mind,
Yeah, and sort of those counterintuitive things. Intuition's great for quick decisions, but counterintuitive things do exist, and we go, well, that how can space be finite but have no boundaries is really, really weird. Like, it's does your head in, but that doesn't, like, just because our minds aren't equipped to deal with it doesn't mean that it's false.
The border of a circle is finite, but it has no boundaries.
That's true.
Along within the space that it exists in, the circumference of a circle, you go forward, you go back. There is no side or up or down coordinate. There is only forward and there is only back, and you never hit the end. If you're on the circumference of a circle, you never hit the end. There is no boundary, but it is finite. In that, if you go at a finite speed, you will eventually visit every single location in that space.
Yeah, it's wild how I had a discussion with a fellow the other day about the concept of finite values within infinities. He was trying to say something along the lines of, if the universe were eternal, it would be impossible to have a discrete period of time, because any fraction of that infinity would also be infinity. And I'm like, that's a problem with a matter of perspective. The number line is infinite, but we still have a definite value of 4.
Yeah, but that's like the Achilles thing, against the racing against the tortoise, that like if the tortoise travels, X amount and then he travels X amount, or the arrow one, I think it's Zeno's paradox.
Zeno's, that's what you're
thinking. Shoot an arrow, but only travels X amount, while the tortoise travels X amount, and it will never catch the tortoise. But back here in reality, we're having turtle soup for dinner. Like, it doesn't actually work. It's all well and good to make a philosophical
and they figured that
statement.
out.
Well,
the mathematicians figured that one out.
Right. But, it's all very well and good to say these things, but when we put it into practical experimentation, it doesn't actually work. So, but yeah, I think we've tangented pretty far away from...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
I've been noticing, but I mean, it's been,
fault.
at least from my point of view, it's been interesting stuff. So,
against the existence of your God. So I'm just curious, what evidence would go against your idea of a God, the supreme foundation?
Yeah, okay.
What would falsify that?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. And so what, for me...
Hey, we're all in agreement with Travis.
10 out of 10.
Hell yeah.
It would be something, because I'm taking a neurological approach to ultimate reality. And so it would be something that doesn't fit in well with that narrative. So, how I talked in my opening, like these various things fit in seamlessly, into a narrative of ultimate redemption and triumph. So it would be something that really goes against the grain of an eventual redemption and triumph.
Time out.
So like what, though?
You can fit anything into a narrative. Anything you want, you can fit into a narrative. Okay? What can you, like, have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? The improbability drive. He has a bowl of petunias that has an introspective, like, doomsday spiral as it plummets to the ground. And it's come back and it's addressed later. You know where he got that from? What he did was he stood up. He stood with his feet shoulder width apart, limbered up, reached way back there and just pulled it right out of his ass. That's what he did. It didn't come from anywhere.
Better story than Twilight. Better narratives than the Bible.
But and Douglas Adams is a name that comes up in this debate. No, I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying like the one that we're covering, but the topic, the teleological argument, Douglas Adams' argument from the puddle, the analogy of the puddle, is one of the best intuition pumps for analyzing and thinking about that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all love the puddle story because it's the whole experience of it. Anybody can say, your argument is like saying that isn't it weird that our hands happen to perfectly fit gloves when we know the gloves were made by us for our hands. But the puddle analogy, because it's got that personification that the puddle is aware and it's doing the same thing we're doing. It shows the mythological thinking in a more visceral way, and that's pretty neat.
Oh, what would that be?
For example, if there was some instance of suffering that couldn't even in principle be defeated, by being defeated, I mean ultimately, redeemed in nature. There's, if atheism provided a better explanation of reality, it would be evidence against my theory. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a supreme foundation out there as a theory. So I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm putting it out there as a theory. And I'm saying, well, hey, let's kind of look at, the principles we use in the philosophy of science, and let's test this theory to see how well it explains various observations.
So how do we test it?
We get into these.
That's the whole point. How do we test it? He didn't ask philosophy of religion, does it test it? He asked, how do you test it? He's saying, what evidence do you have for it? And you're sort of saying, well, in philosophy of religion, we test it. Great. What's the test?
Well, Mark, you have to understand, this has been addressed by Craig or Rufus or something.
C.S. Lewis addressed this in his seminary work.
He probably did. That freaking guy.
Theistic arguments and atheological arguments and so on.
Okay,
so it can be possible.
I want to run with this. Can we stop sharing the screen?
Right.
No worries. Let's go over to Eric. So floor is yours.
So the idea of there is suffering without redemption or whatever. Now, if you're just going to claim that Jesus really did live and resurrect, and that's true, so ultimately there was a redemption, then the only proof that would the only thing that would disprove that is if we can prove that the resurrection didn't really happen. But I don't want to go down that road because we just got done talking about the resurrection for a long time. But I want to talk about what I think the biggest problems with the problem of evil are like the pointless suffering. So the key to suffering is in the natural world that we see, and why I think this is not that this counts as evidence.
Yeah, that would change things quite a lot if, every time you went through a really, really bad experience, something that involved intense suffering, if every single time that happened, you not only survived, but were demonstrably stronger, better off in some way, then it would give people a ray of hope when they're going through a bad time. We could console each other and say, don't worry, it sucks right now, but you're going to be better off for it later. But we don't see that. That's not how that works.
Sometimes you suffer and suffer and suffer, and then you die. And sometimes that happens right after you say, I hate God for doing this to me, and then you die. And if we're going by any typical Christian model, well, you just threw away your get out of jail free card by saying that you hate God right before you die. So I guess
should be saying, thank you, Space Wizard, for making me suffer like Christ.
And in the ontology of reality that I believed when I was a Christian, the consequence was eternal suffering.
Yes.
Which is categorically the worst thing that I can imagine. I can't imagine anything worse. You could multiply the suffering at each point by some arbitrary factor, but if it's eternal, eventually it doesn't matter.
It's all infinite, and by definition pointless, because if it will never stop, then there's never any benefit that could be reaped from it, except possibly the sadistic pleasure of the one inflicting it.
And I think from my point of view that the real death to this argument of well, you learn things from the suffering that helps you grow as a person, is that you get sort of infants that die while being born. What possible lesson? They don't have the cognition to learn anything. They're not they don't survive for that. What possible reason? And then the mother has to go on suffering. But even if the mother learns something out of that, the child doesn't learn anything. It just dies. So it's very strange to have that child being used as a lesson for the mother, and it's incapable of learning anything from that experience. It's a child. It doesn't even have object permanence. It's not going to understand anything. So this whole idea hinges upon, well, you learn after your death, and it's well, that's not something we can test either. We do try to find the good things in bad things that happen, but not all of them do. Not everything does have a good side at all. And the question is a God evil if the bad outweighs the good? Yes, absolutely. And all of this true suffering, not just, imposition or pain, a short amount of pain, always true suffering, the bad will outweigh the good. Absolutely it will. You really have to, if something really horrible makes you suffer, you've really got to find, work hard to find something good out of it. But all in all, we would rather the bad thing not happen at all. It's not worth the suffering to get a small lesson in, some small amount of sort of salvageable good out of that. It just doesn't outweigh it.
And the calculus, when you're talking about an omnipotent being, this is a being that can flip the switch and be there is no... The thing about learning from bad stuff that happens is because that is helpful in the reality that we live in, where we have to deal with bad stuff happening. If you could just get rid of all of the bad stuff and there was only good stuff, those lessons are completely pointless.
Right. And everybody dies and goes to heaven, where the lessons are going to be completely pointless because no bad stuff ever happened.
But not everybody goes to heaven, though. I wish everybody went to heaven. That would have been much more comforting.
But either way, if you go to hell, only bad stuff happens. There is no there's no good that happens that you have to find in hell. Like there's no good to be found. And in heaven, there's no evil to be found. So the lessons you've learnt dealing with evil don't matter anyway. So why? What's the point?
Exactly.
So it's all, if Travis were correct, it's all pointless. Awesome.
And I might add, if souls are eternal, right, they're around forever, and God will know which people will get into heaven and which ones will get into hell. So why doesn't he just take the souls, put them in their designated places, and skip the whole material world altogether? Like, why have it? If he already knows what's going to happen and whether you will be a good or a bad person, it seems pointless to go through this whole charade of actually living this out when he already knows what's going to happen.
Well, I think that points at another flaw in theistic thinking, in that assuming, because the nature of Christianity is such that God thinks you specifically are special and wants your soul to be saved. But if there were a God and he has a different goal in mind, and you in fact are not the center of the entire universe, then maybe suffering to you could be allowable if that's the means by which he achieves this other goal.
But I have to be right because my religion is right. My denomination is right. Yeah. So that can't be true.
Details.
Yeah.
Evidence against an omnibenevolent God is that the suffering that is inflicted is done by impersonal forces. And I don't really think that there's room for impersonal forces in the theistic world, because you'd have to claim that God desires a cosmic ray that strikes somebody and mutates a mole on their arm and gives them cancer. God would desire for that to happen. And I don't think that really makes any sense. And there's also the problem that suffering is actually the means of creation in the natural world. Organisms are shaped by this brutal competition in and amongst themselves and within nature to try to exploit niches and to try to reproduce. There's other stuff I want to talk about with regard to that. But I don't want to just go on forever. So
if I could really just quickly, one thing that would count for you as evidence falsifying God would be if atheism would be a better explanation for our observable reality. Well, I have 5 aspects of our observable reality that I went through in my opener that I at least would consider atheism to be better at explaining than theism. So I think right there, you've got your sufficient falsifiable.
So let me come into that. I'm glad we brought up the problem of evil, because I have a real love for the philosophy of religion. That's like what I've really read the most on is the problem of evil within analytic philosophy of religion. So to kind of start off with like teleological evils, natural evils, and so on. And so what matters here is going to be our axiology, which means what kind of, because you were talking about, God would have to want this ray to be harmful and so on. And so is our fundamental axiology, which is the God justifying norms of allowing suffering. And so the kind of axiology
the God justifying norms for allowing suffering. That's what matters. The things that justify my worldview.
Well, he's trying to come at it again. Axiology is like values, right? Something's valuable, something is worth it, basically. So he's trying to come at this. Well, if something bad, if somebody suffers, and at the end it's worth it, if it has some sort of worth to it, then it's a good thing. But you sort of have to go, well, and this is sort of what Mother Teresa did. She thought suffering was holy because it had this value to it. But then you'd have to sort of go, well, if at the end of the day, this suffering is actually good because the suffering itself provides it with some sort of value, like a moral lesson, a life lesson, or some sort of, hardening of the soul that makes you a better person, then you would have to sort of say that, for instance, Eric's example of getting skin cancer because some, God sent a cosmic laser beam down to hit you at a certain angle.
That's a deadly laser.
Well, you have to claim, because really when we're talking about good and evil, we're really talking about sort of at the end of the day, when all factors are considered, is this a benefit or a harm, basically? Is this good or bad? So you'd have to say that was a good thing. So, but you know, you nobody in their right mind would wander around and say, hey, skin cancer is great, it's a good thing. Like, you know, atheists go, well, cancer sucks, it is a horrible malignant thing that is, you know, it can seriously, cancer is one of the worst things ever because it is your own body out of control, attacking itself. It's terrible. But he's saying, no, it's a good thing. And it's like, you are out of your mind. Like, that is not a good thing. You know, a child getting leukemia and dying is not a good thing. But you're like, well, it is good because of the valuable life lesson. And it's like, how is that good? You know,
you wouldn't have to learn the life lesson if you didn't have all these horrible things that life has.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, you're not wrong, and it makes me think of the story with David and the cheating to make the baby thing, where like everyone but David got punished because it's a life lesson for David, not the people actually suffering.
So look at this list here he's got. A God who is perfect in love, power, and knowledge wouldn't allow evil. Human epistemological limitations. What that means is we don't understand what God's doing, so we're flawed. It is good, we just don't understand it. Okay, then why is cancer not good? Okay, why is that so? That's the question. No best of all possible worlds response. Possible worlds to me in philosophy, a lot of people treat it as some kind of alternative reality. They treat it as another dimension or another possible world kind of thing, like some sort of multiverse that the Flash goes through. I just think it's a conceptual thing. I think that, you know, the best possible world is just the best concept of a world we could imagine without suffering or without all of this stuff. I don't think it's a real thing. I think that the best possible world in reality is the one we actually have, and we can make it better. I don't think that it's something that exists somewhere else. I think it's just conceptual. I don't see why it should be, soul-making theodicy. Like, basically you're saying all this harm happens so your soul can be better. Again, you're at the point where you're saying that all of these bad things are in fact good. And if all of these bad things are good, if that example of skin cancer actually makes you a better person or a better soul, then why do we bother treating cancer? This is the logical progression that you go down, that if in fact you are treating that, you are retarding your soul from being the best it can be. Hence, all of those cancer treatments are bad. That's where it will get you to.
They defy the will of God, just like, you know, glasses, which Apollos is wearing. He's defying God's will for his bad vision and inhibiting his soul's growth in dealing with bad vision.
Yeah, I would go through all of these, a bit long, but basically he's just tossing that on the screen, completely unasked for, by the way, to sort of say, hey, there's all of these defenses. It is just a gish gallop, a present screen gish gallop. There's none of these actually get to the heart of the problem, which is why the problem of evil is so. It currently is as a killer for theism. Or the classical Christian theism. Not so much others, like Calvinism's fine. Some other religions are fine. It's the classical Christian one that suffers under this. So they come up with all of these excuses and apologetics, which none of them solve the problem.
No, and they all carry their own baggage, like the best possible world thing that has always bugged me, because that's a whole other unfalsifiable thing. As you said, it's a conceptual idea, but also, what do we mean by best? That's where you start to get into the axiology. What is it that you value as the best? And then we're talking in terms of logical possibilities. But when you really get right down to it, the world that exists is the only possible world.
Right.
It's not logically impossible. There could be others, but it depends on what you mean and what you're talking about. It's not clear. In fact, it's deliberately vague because there's obfuscation being used to present a fallacious alternative as if it weren't fallacious. And that's some bullshit. That's some kiddie table nonsense. A similar thing with these theodicies. Theodicy, I think it was Mr. Deity who said it's what happens when you take theology and idiocy and make a portmanteau of it, because it's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's literally an excuse. They can't even call it an apologetic. It's, I made up this thing that if it were true, it would explain this thing. But you're bringing in a whole other load of unfalsifiable additional hypotheses. It's nonsense. It's obviously nonsense. And yes, the priest dude, absolute Chad. That jawline, that beard.
Look, if you're doing a serious debate,
that's literally the Chad guy. Like that. Yeah. That is the guy. The photo.
His name is Chad. Father Chad.
Well, his name isn't Chad. He's apparently a fairly reclusive like dude. This is not an AI image though. Like this came out many years ago. It's an old meme, and I thought it was CGI. I thought it was CGI until one day I looked it up. It's a specific dude.
I think the meme,
honestly he's a pretty awesome guy apparently.
Yeah, I think the meme is the Giga Chad, basically. Yeah, that's what the meme is called.
Chad. Yeah, and apparently he is kind of a Giga Chad, so you know.
But, I mean, you know, his chin has a chin. That's fucking wild.
If these photos came out today, if this meme came out today, we would all say this was AI generated.
Yep.
I was kind of pondering, actually. I was like, a jaw like that, could it be real?
It's real. It's
a real guy.
It's also the choice of the trimming. Like the trimming really accentuates it. Like it's not nearly that sharp.
That's a trick I know very well. When I was very, very big and my skull just kind of blended into my neck, I faked a jawline by creative trimming.
Yeah, no. But he's also like apparently a good guy, so it's weird.
Hell yeah.
Going to go with is, in fact, I mentioned it in my opening, is what's highlighted by thinkers like Roderick Chisholm, Trent Doherty, Marilyn Milford Adams, and that's what's known as the defeat condition. And so this states that God is permissible in allowing bad states of affairs that are in principle defeasible. And the way that they can be defeated is by being that piece being integrated into an overall good whole that eventually becomes valuable and non-regrettable to the creature, be it a human or an animal. So I do believe in the animal afterlife. And so the view
just to clarify, you do believe that both Eric and myself, if we do not repent, we will ultimately not have any redemption, and that we will just suffer forever, right? No redemption for us.
No, I don't believe that at all. No.
Nice.
Okay, well, that seems to be kind of different than standard Christian belief. And what's the redemption for? Wait. If Eric and I continue being atheists and we don't convert, we don't accept Jesus into our hearts, what is our ultimate redemption then? Since you believe fundamentally that the entire arc for all beings is one of ultimate redemption, what is our redemption ultimately?
Well, see, I lean towards Christian universalism when it comes to that. But another.
So he believes that everybody goes to heaven regardless of what they believe or not. That's universalism.
Deal.
Sorry,
that's an excellent deal. I'm like, if God wants to do that, I'm like, my opinion of God goes way up if everybody goes to heaven.
So, but that doesn't get around the question of evil. It's that they're going to suffer, and apparently it's going to make them sort of better people in the afterlife. But why have the suffering at all? Like, what's the point?
Why have Christianity at all? Because like, if you go to heaven no matter what's the point of the religion? Like, this is sidestepping the main issue. You can have theoretically, logically, you can have God be real and be perfectly merciful. Everybody goes to heaven, whatever the case may be. You can have all the things, and Christianity, the religion, is still false. In fact, it's more likely than not under that kind of scenario.
Well, I think that universalists generally, they will have a hierarchy in heaven. Basically, that's what they believe. Generally, I don't know. I just want to make clear, I don't know if this is Travis's views, but there's thing in the Bible saying that people that do X, Y, and Z will be known as lesser in heaven kind of thing. So it does suggest a hierarchy. So the Christians will be at the top of that hierarchy, essentially, that everybody gets in, but there's a special place for them at the right hand of God or something like that. You know, like generally that's what they believe. So there is something in it for them to be a Christian. They just don't believe that everybody will get that special place. So it's more a case of everyone gets ice cream, but you'll get the cherry on top kind of thing.
The Mormons, yeah. That's how they sort of do it too.
Yeah, that's come up twice today, weirdly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, though, that it really doesn't get around the whole problem of evil, because if you want to say, well, in fact, say, just take the cancer example, that, hey, that given to you, you're going to make it to heaven, Eric, who gets cancer, and that suffering will improve your place or somehow give you a benefit or build your character for the thing. It's sort of like, well, that's all well and good, but then you've got to say the cancer is a good thing. It's good, right? Because it will strengthen your place or give you the strength to be there or give you some kind of benefit in the afterlife. So if we go and treat it, thereby taking it away, that's got to be a bad thing. The problem is that if you define all of this stuff as good, then negating it has to be bad. That's how logic works. You can't negate a good thing and say, well, that's good as well. How is that good as well?
Yeah, but they have to phrase it that way because the alternative is it's completely pointless. If everyone goes to heaven regardless, then the suffering doesn't actually serve a purpose, except in a very, Book of Job, God winning a bet sort of way.
Yeah, I think it sort of is, I don't know why you would need character building for heaven where nothing bad happens. I think Tapioca had a really good point with that. That if nothing bad happens there, then why do you need character? Or,
It's one of these points that I feel is at first blush, like nobody thinks about it, but it's sort of like, wait, hold on. Fundamentally, isn't that all unnecessary if everything's just great all the time? Like if I say everything is great all the time, and then you're like, yeah, but that's not actually great, then that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when it's actually great all of the time. Because if you're lacking all of these valuable lessons and whatnot that you get from suffering, figure out a way to bake those into the scenario I'm describing, and boom, suddenly now it's actually everything's great, and we're wasting our time here. Omnipotence is an absurd concept.
It is, really. And I also have a question, like, what animals get to go to heaven? Like, he said he believed in animal heaven. I want to know, like, the cockroaches.
This is one of the reasons I'm an atheist, because I'm pretty damn sure, based on the way the word is used in, the English language, that weasels, we ain't going to heaven, we be going right to hell, okay?
Well,
because we're trying to weasel out of everything. And,
so he doesn't believe in hell, so that's not
no, he doesn't, apparently. But
to be honest with
he's
you,
Satan.
And he's kind of got a biblically stronger point, because hell isn't even, hell's not even in the Bible. There's no real hell mentioned at all. It's just something that came up with sort of Dante's Inferno and stuff. That there's nothing in there that really says there's a place of suffering kind of thing, except maybe in Revelation, but that isn't necessarily at the end of everything kind of thing. So this whole idea is kind of weird. But animal heaven, like if you have a what like, does the dog with rabies go to heaven? How does that work? What makes it and what doesn't? Do mosquitoes go to heaven? What do they feed on? It's so weird. Like, I've never heard this before. Like, I've seen plenty of pastors and stuff say, hey, we don't know if there's a heaven for your beloved dog or not, because I'm certainly not going to say that your dog just evaporates into nothing and obliterates. But I've never seen somebody go, oh, yeah, no, I believe in a heaven for animals.
Is it
the
just
same
animals?
place?
Is it all living things? Is there
I
a
don't
tree
know.
heaven? Is there a fungus heaven?
Right.
I mean,
Is there a
would it even
mold heaven?
be heaven if there's no trees?
Yeah, and so are the trees fake? Are they fake trees? Is the same place? Are we there with the animals in heaven, or is it this different place, like pet cemetery kind of thing? Like, what's going on here? This is so wild to me. I've never heard this before. Virus what happens there? Technically, viruses are not alive, so
That's
don't think
our
so.
definition, though.
Well, yeah, they don't fit all the criteria for living things that we've espounded. So, yeah, there's a big debate in biology over whether viruses are alive or not. It's debated. It's debated.
It's such a weird. I mean, I get why it's debated, but it's weird when things in the universe are what they are. We're creating our own little boxes and circles to describe stuff, and how we place those boxes doesn't change reality in any way. Viruses are, whether we call them alive or not, doesn't actually matter. So it's just a weird thing to debate, I think.
Yeah, but if you want to say that viruses are alive because they replicate, kind of thing, you've got to apply the same to, say, crystals, which can form more crystals, like they can replicate. So the sort of categories between alive and not alive they're becoming really shady, like what is alive and what isn't. And that's something we would expect if life did originate from non-life, like, abiogenesis occurred. It gets a bit fuzzy on what's alive and what's not.
I mean, that fundamentally is just another line we've drawn.
Yeah.
We do like to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Response I can give too, that God doesn't have to necessarily grant heaven in order to defeat the suffering. So one way that in principle he could defeat the suffering for an agent on is to show that show them that their life was valuable and meaningful, and how they could have participated in an overall good whole had they chose it. And moreover, any rational being would have chosen in their place. And so that's, Trent Doherty, for example, will take that route. Me, I'm sort of a hopeful universalist in that I think, for example, like, let's say your atheism now, well, I think it's valuable because I think it can be truth tracking. It's a way of, facing reality and trying to see it for what it is. So I think there is some value to it. And I think, at this point, it will become a non-regrettable part of your identity on the whole. That I think, how I was talking about.
Wait, you're saying that I'm going to be like suffering in the afterlife, but I'm going to be like, you know what? I
didn't say you would.
All right, guys. Eric's trying to jump in here as well, so let's make some space if we can. Eric, you look like you're trying to jump in.
Yeah, I just want to evolve this problem of evil discussion a little bit, because what I typically hear, and I heard a little bit of this response from Travis there, is God allows suffering to happen, and that's part of a workaround for the problem of evil. But one of the big issues I see is that God directly commands and desires for suffering to happen. So, for example, even in a country like the United States 100 years ago, 1 in 5 children died before the age of 5. And that was mostly due to infectious diseases, right?
Right.
So
naturally, yeah.
Yes. And what we know is that God commanded that foreskins be removed in an era where infectious diseases would have been a far greater killer of people, and causing untold amounts of suffering for peoples afflicted by it and for grieving families who lose a child. So God said, I need you to cut off those foreskins, knowing that that would cause just an immeasurable amount of suffering. And God could choose not to do that. God desired for that to happen as a selfish means of, we don't have to get into the theological reason for why circumcisions are happening, or why they're done, like as a partial flesh sacrifice to discount real human sacrifice. Some people think that's why it is. Some people think it's for other reasons. But
yeah, that's arguable. I personally just find it incredulous where people say God is perfect and you're perfectly made, except for that one little bit of skin.
Right.
You have to take care of that yourself. Very, very strange.
Well, back in sort of the Old Testament and Judaism, that humans aren't perfectly made. This is a very Christian concept that we're all made. Sort of their idea of made in the image of God is that people were still horrendously flawed. Like they weren't sort of perfectly made at all. So it's kind of Christianity says that, not really at the time.
Yeah. Christian, I mean, that's the whole thing, though, is Christianity true? I wish at some point they would have gotten into which Christianity. I realize that's a discussion in and of itself, but it would have been nice to see, I suppose.
I mean, there's been a few things of why circumcision has actually happened. I mean, one hypothesis is that they wanted to reduce the sensitivity of the male genitalia so they'd be less promiscuous, kind of thing. Like, so there's a few different ideas of why it was done. I don't think we really know. I think it's one of those traditions that incredibly stupidly just caught on and kept going,
Well, I mean, it wasn't, like all things, subjected to evolutionary pressure. The mutations may be random, but the selection,
Yeah.
That's God commanding that to happen, not sitting back and being, which I think the indifference to allowing suffering is not consistent with omnibenevolence either. But God also does things like command that people be exterminated rather than revealing himself to them. And we could talk about the story of Job next, but I want to ramble too much. I want to let you respond.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, and I appreciate that. So when it comes to for some temporary time T in the Old Testament, I would say number one, the Orthodox Church doesn't necessarily take that interpretation of the Old Testament, and we're obviously under a Christological view now that doesn't entail the foreskin aspect, and there's a lot of different ways that can kind of be dealt with.
I feel like he's mott and bailing it. As soon as you bring up something about Christianity, he's like, well, not my Christianity, kind of thing. And that's kind of the point. Like, a God would clear this shit up. Like, if a God was omnibenevolent, omniscient, and omnipotent, he would go, well, I know they're going to fight among themselves. I know they're going to have these issues. And I could clear this up in like 2 seconds by simply, zapping them with the truth.
Yeah, just pull back the damn curtain.
Just doesn't do it. Just nope. And people say, well, it interferes with free will. No, not really. I mean, you're saying that he wants us to believe in a certain thing, but wants us to use unreliable methods to find it, schism a church, and fight among us. Like, what is that? Like, the God will know that's going to happen. He will know. He has to.
It makes me think of that one Old Testament story where the people of Yahweh took on the people of a different God, and that God won because that God was more real, but Yahweh is totally omnipotent and also the one true God. But never mind that. We're not going to read the book the stories are from. That would be silly. It just, yeah, I mean, but even then he was capable of just revealing himself, like, behold, here I am, a fucking burning bush or a pillar of fire or a column of cloud or whatever the case may be. But nope, I'm not going to reveal myself. You have to go murder those people because their suffering is good and it's an aroma pleasing unto the Lord.
Yeah.
Ancient Near Eastern literature.
Well, you don't do it, but they did do it, and it was under the command of God.
Right. Okay. So, and you're saying that that's part of the problem of evil. That's part of suffering. And so here's
not God allowing suffering.
Right.
That is God commanding it to happen
unnecessarily.
Yeah. You could you'd have to make the case here now that has any possible point to it other than God's selfishness or God works in mysterious ways we don't understand.
God could have just not created us with foreskins, and then all of those children that died from infectious diseases from failed circumcision would have still been alive. So it seems pretty unnecessary.
Okay. So
that's what I was getting at. Is like, why create them with it?
Yeah.
It just.
Yeah, see, if you just get rid of all of the suffering that you benefit for, then if everything was just great all the time, it would just be great all the time.
Are we smarter than God?
Yes. Vastly.
Yes. You know why? Because we're not fictional.
I mean, that helps. We can demonstrate that we exist for one thing.
Yeah.
but yeah, like our friend Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels, not to be confused with our friend Eric from Planet Peterson. Skeptics and Scoundrels Eric has his first big video is, if you took the role of Yahweh and repeated history exactly the same, and only at one point, any point, killed one less child, you're a better God than Yahweh. You're a more moral God than Yahweh anyway. And if you can be better than this supposedly perfect being, then it's obviously false.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So circumcision, it was an ancient Near Eastern way of there's an ancient Near Eastern motif to this that doesn't have to be taken literal. So I don't want to get too far off into this. Okay, so but let's look at what becomes evidence in terms of the problem of evil. Okay, because that's what we're really trying to decipher here. And what I'm saying is that given my axiology, in order for something to count as evidence against theism, it would have to be indefeasible. And what that means is that it can't even in principle be defeated, because I'm applying a defeat condition. And so, and I've also talked about the Christological narrative of redemption. And so if there was a story, a grand metaphysical,
it would be a defeat condition if you didn't keep moving the damn goalposts. Also, quick side note, members get to vote on emojis on this channel. Whenever we unlock a new emoji slot, the members get to do a vote and pick the next emoji. So all the emojis available have been voted on by previous members. However, we are a long, long way away from the next member slot or emoji slot unlock.
Girl, I need numbers. because if there's a vote, you know who wins votes?
I've heard that rumor.
The weasel.
It's true. It's true.
My electoral history, fantastic. Just saying. So let's do this, guy. Okay, we gotta start dropping memberships though. Yeah, we need numbers though.
Where? I'm flipping through the pages in the studio thing. Let's see. For the next member slot, or emoji slot rather. Oh boy. How many emojis do we have right now? I think I need to pull up a chart because we don't even have enough members for the emojis we have. It tells me I need 21 more members for the 13th slot, and I think we have 14, but I haven't counted in a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have 16 and 21 more to get to 13, 14, 15, 16. I believe once you go past 100, they go into groups of 25 for a while. So basically 100 more members, just shy of 100 more to get back up to where we were and then unlock the next slot.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Share the stream, invite your friends, dude, or better yet, watch the new pre-recorded video, the legal founder making fun of Ray Comfort. It's my first try at a parody on this channel, which is probably why it's not doing super well, but that would be a great thing to share with people and be like, hey, look at this. It's comedy. Subscribe to the channel, join memberships, all that shit. Just a suggestion though. Just you know.
And you got to smash that like button too.
All the smashing all the time. We atheists are so destructive.
Sometimes violence is the answer, and sometimes the victim is the like button.
I got accused of that yet. So, Forrest Valkai.
Yeah.
Long story, but he did a premiere yesterday. He released the updated Sex and Sensibility video, which I've been looking forward to for a very long time. So of course I was listening for the premiere, and like the very first thing he said to me in the chat was, Ember walks in here and chooses violence. I mean, it's fair, but you know.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Oh well, I do digress.
Don't we all?
Of how creatures come to overcome their suffering and eventually become saints and heroes and victorious. Well, part of that entails undergoing bad states of affairs. And so what I'm saying is that this a narrative of eventual triumph and redemption, at the very least, has more explanatory power given the states of affairs like suffering than just that principle of indifference alone. Because naturalism, it doesn't entail that we will come to observe these specific states of affairs as well as a grand narrative of eventual triumph. And when it comes to the foreskins and so forth, you could just say that it was part of an ancient Near Eastern motif that kind of marked out for the Israelites that they worshiped the one true God and they weren't part of the Canaanite system. And as I mentioned, Eastern Orthodoxy
This
takes
is a wild
lot of
argument. This is a wild argument. It's kind of going, hey, a grand narrative has value, therefore, because sort of just a random collection of events doesn't have a grand narrative structure. Like, what makes the grand narrative structure? I get that you like it, but that's an appeal to consequence. That's basically going, well, I don't like it if there's no overall amazing narrative behind it all. Okay, so what? Big deal. I don't like it that I'm not a millionaire. What it doesn't make it so. Like, this is the thing, like, this is wishful thinking. This is, again, I see this. It's like this, oh, well, if no objective morals exist, then anyone can do anything. Yeah, and they do.
Yeah. We do see that, yeah. But also he posits that it has greater explanatory power. It doesn't, though. In fact, it has worse, because not only does it fail to actually explain the situation, it invites even more questions that now need to also be explained. It has negative explanatory power.
And he never answered the question, like, why does God intentionally order suffering upon people if he's good? That's it. That's the question. And your thing, it goes on about this grand narrative structure, and it's got nothing to do with the question. It just didn't answer it.
It's his favorite thing. We're secretly in a novel. It's, well, that's blasphemous, isn't it? Because if reality is secretly a novel, then this is the greatest story ever told. For certain values of great, which means the Bible isn't, which is a problem.
It's a problem.
So they're not even committed to the literal truth of it anyway. And so I think that kind of answers it.
No,
unless you have
Travis,
some follow.
Do you think that God commanded Israelites to remove the foreskin from their children?
Yes, I think it's in Scripture. Yes.
Why did
God
do that?
I think it's an ancient Near Eastern motif against war, that it represents war. And so,
why would God care about ancient Near
He's just making shit up at this point. First of all, there's nothing in Scripture indicating that the people. I mean, it started with Abraham, right? So by the time they're Israelites, they're all doing it, and they're very fucking warlike. So it's just made up, and it doesn't fit with the story. There's nothing in Scripture indicating that. There's nothing in the traditions or any doctrine I've ever heard of. I have never heard. Granted, what I've heard doesn't make a thing true or not, but I've never heard any scholar of any related discipline make this claim that it was an anti-warlike tradition or what. It's so post hoc, and it's demonstrably not true.
Yeah, if he said, "Hey, it's a tradition of obedience," that I would pay, right? That God was going to kill if he did not get this foreskin, basically. Like, it was a sacrifice to. Like, I could say, okay, well, then it's a tradition of showing obedience to your God. Yes, I can understand. War. How? It wasn't like you had the Bible saying like a whole bunch of soldiers lined up and threw foreskins at the opponent. Like, come on, what are we talking about here?
Although David didn't technically win a throne by collecting foreskins. Details, though. But yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what it was, is, when God was arguing with Abraham. he didn't give any specific reason for why circumcision, why he was commanding it. It was, as far as we can tell from the story, he was commanding it to make Abraham obey. The same thing with the sacrificing of Isaac. It wasn't because he wanted Isaac dead. It was because he wanted Abraham to obey.
You know what my hypothesis is? My hypothesis is that all of that was some sort of weird, fucked up cosmic bet.
What,
It's
like
been known to
somebody
happen.
bet Yahweh to say, like, I bet you couldn't get him to chop part of their penis off. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Literally,
Literally,
he goes, hold my beer.
Exactly. It like, if you actually like, okay, so imagine the simulation hypothesis is true.
Yeah.
And then just like think on that for a second, and you're like, oh fuck, yeah, tech bros suck.
Yeah.
And then that explains it.
It's fucking tech bros.
I find that more credible than it was tradition associated with avoiding war for some reason. I find that way more credible, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Eastern motifs.
But why would
Because
God?
that's what the Old Testament is. It's an ancient Near Eastern motif.
God can do anything, and he chose to cause
I don't think that's true either. Like there's a, granted, the peoples that are around today are not the same as the peoples who were around at the time, even though they're genetically descended one from the other. But one of the big things that was, a tribal trait characteristic of the Hebrew people was the circumcision. So I don't think it's correct to say it was just a thing Middle Easterners did at the time. I don't think the Persians did. I don't think, the people in modern Lebanon did. I don't think the people in the Arabian Peninsula did. Maybe they did.
Well, it's been around through other cultures as well. There's some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that used to practice it as well. And there is sort of an argument to be made that there's a limited medical benefit for doing this thing, because there can be, like through the STIs and stuff like that, there can be buildups of infection underneath the foreskin. But what we know medically now is that that does not outweigh the risk of infection from the actual operation, especially, in a place that has no antiseptic or antibacterials kind of thing. And just, if you keep the area clean, it's perfectly sufficient. Like it's totally fine. And plus that also says, well, why did he give it to them in the first place? It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So yeah, there's no good reason to perform a circumcision at all. Any circumcision.
told infant death and suffering, as well as for parents. How can an omnibenevolent being do that?
Okay, let me explain what's going on here.
Sense for an omnibenevolent being to do that.
Okay, so let's kind of get this back in here. What you're doing is you're assuming what's known as a necessity condition. A necessity condition states that a God of a certain moral ethic.
Continue. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just saying we'll end.
Yeah. So this is important. I need to highlight the mistake that's happening here, like when it comes to the problem of evil. So what's going on is you're assuming sort of what's known as a necessity condition, and that states that a person of a normative moral ethics will do will only allow suffering when to not do so would cause some greater suffering to occur. And so I'm rejecting that axiology. What I'm saying, what my axiological approach is that for any people to be evidence against theism, it would have to, in principle, be indefeasible. And so what that means is that there is no way that God could redeem that into an overall good whole. Now,
so he's doing a whole lot of bullshit here. I mean, he's substituting theism for Christianity. He's pulling this axiology nonsense. He's not addressing whether what he believes is true, which is supposedly the point. And I realize it probably doesn't need to be said, but I really want to point at it and say he's not just stacking bullshit on top of bullshit. He's dodging the actual issue in the first place.
you know,
So
you
it's
have to,
unfalsifiable.
let me finish. This is
You
the
need
beginning of
to
our-
give the
admitted
you
it's
need to give the
unfalsifiable.
argument and the evidence that there was any point to this then, and that because you're shifting the burden of proof onto us. You're saying,
No,
well,
you didn't even let me finish.
Okay, Travis, you have been
well,
talking.
but I've heard the exact same
inordinate-
thing like 3 times in a row. Is all. I'm
And
trying to
also,
be
sorry.
fair here, but it's also a little frustrating.
What,
I'm
yeah.
just-
Yeah, hold on. Grayson's trying to jump in too, guys, for quite a bit. So yeah, go ahead there, Grayson.
Okay,
Even though
okay.
I was gonna say I know I wasn't totally fair, just because I know you're usually very capable of jumping in. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead. Go ahead, Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's a disproportionate amount of time here. I think we are being fair in the time. And personally, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that an all good, all powerful God could create a universe that has any suffering at all. At all. It seems like a perfect being could only make perfect creations. The fact that our universe is fallen means that it couldn't have been created by a perfect being, in my opinion. I'm happy to be
Okay.
honest. But mainly, the point I want to bring up is what I see happening here is that I asked you, Travis, what would falsify your belief? And you said it would falsify your belief if you could show that there's unnecessary suffering. But now you're trying to say that it would have to be shown that this suffering that we're claiming it to be unnecessary, there is no way that an all-powerful God could make that suffering worth it in the end, which it obviously...
It was in my opening statement. It was in my opening statement.
Yes, but the point that Grayson is making is, how do you show that that is not unnecessary suffering? Again, it's an unfalsifiability condition. You're basically saying that, oh, show unnecessary suffering. Oh, well, we're suffering and there doesn't seem to be a necessity for it. And you're saying, well, in fact, there is a necessity, but I'm not going to show that. Well, then it's not a falsifiability condition.
We have achieved circularity. Perfect.
Obviously, an all-powerful God could do. So therefore, it is therefore impossible to prove that an all-powerful, all-good God could not redeem any suffering. Therefore, it's impossible to show you, based on your priors, any unnecessary suffering. Therefore, your beliefs are unfalsifiable.
And I also just like to point out that possible and unfalsifiable are 2 different things. That's all.
Yeah, and not only that, but you know, if we're going to be anywhere, you know, remotely, you know, using philosophy here, you have to assume my axiology. The theist chooses their own axiology, and so you have to make objections that fit within that axiology. So, you know,
wait. Why do we have to assume your value system?
Because the goalposts are infinitely mobile, and you have to, you know, kick a field goal that meets Travis's goalposts. So, but at the same time, with the same kick, you have to hit every other set of goalposts too.
Then it becomes like, how do we know your axiology is actually right? How do we know that the values you're assigning to this suffering is actually value at the end of the day? How do we know that? Because that's unfalsifiable as well. It seems to be a matter of faith that all of this has a point. It's going to be good. It's going to have something worth it. How do we know that? Like, you're just saying it. Yeah,
but that's a good thing though.
Oh, yeah.
It's just another level of suffering and is therefore virtuous.
I do find that to be one of the things that, like, sometimes you're talking to somebody who has never heard somebody respond that, like, faith is the fundamentally the concept of it sounds like just a bad idea. And they're like, you have to just believe, and you're like, but that sounds like a terrible idea. Like, why? Are you thinking about this? Sometimes people have never heard of it. Not these guys. This guy. I mean, yeah, but
right. Like people. It's not. He's got it backwards as per usual. Like, if you want us to even try to falsify the thing that you're proposing, you have to give us not only a way to do that, but a reason to care, to like, we don't run around falsifying, you know, Dougs and Blarney Stones and I forget Planet Peterson's favorite thing. It's Spanky. There we go.
Spanky. Yeah.
Yes. You know, we don't, because we don't. First of all, some of them are actually falsifiable, but whatever. We don't have a reason to believe those things to bother to try to falsify them in the first place. And so we need both of those conditions, and Travis has provided neither, just excuses.
a necessity condition, like what you were saying with the foreskins, yeah, that could be evidence against them, but that's assuming a necessity condition, which I'm not doing. I'm assuming a defeat condition. So it would have to, in principle, be indefeasible, that God could not, and so what it needs to be defeated is that, that agent will see how it was integrated into an overall good whole that becomes valuable and non-regrettable for them. For instance, like let's say a lot of people that suffer.
Suffering can have value and still be regretted.
Yes.
As
often is actually.
Very often, yeah. And I was talking to a couple of people over the course of the day today about, I don't want to get into the specific topic because it's not important, but I have found a considerable amount of silver lining from something that caused great suffering, but I still don't, I wish the suffering had not happened. So you could say, even though I have found a way to benefit from the suffering, I also regret the suffering.
Well, one way that God can defeat that suffering is that they will come to identify Christ and his suffering. And that intimacy they form with Christ will become so valuable to them that the suffering becomes non-regrettable. Because that's what it means for suffering to be defeated, is that it becomes a valuable, non-regrettable part of a larger whole.
Those parents and children are long dead by the time the crucifixion and the resurrection happens. So I don't see where their redemption ever takes place.
By on the whole, it means their eternal life altogether. That's what on the whole
You're
means.
trying to tell us, Travis, that eventually, in the far, far future, that if Eric and I don't repent and we continue to be atheists and we're burning in hell, that eventually we are not going to regret our atheism. Even when we're burning in hell and suffering eternally, we're going to say, oh, you know what? I don't regret being an atheist because I understand God has told me that it's good, it's served the overall scheme of things. So I don't regret it at all. And I don't regret it even if I'm suffering eternally for it. That's what you're trying to tell me, is that one day I come to that realization?
Well, yeah, I mean, but not the suffering, because like I said, I'm partial to a Christian universalism where all will eventually be saved, and that hell is more restorative than punishment. It's punishment, but it's in a restorative manner.
The lake of fire is restorative. I mean, for me, it would be because I'm an ember, but most of y'all are flammable.
It seems like he's made a conditional that can't possibly be proved false. Like any suffering that we see is automatically necessitated because he's assigning a value to it. So you could point to, and I think it'd be
falsifiable.
Well, yeah, you could point to a baby dying of malaria, for instance. Like what sort of, what good value, or what does that help? What is that value there? And he would say, well, it has some value. It is a circular argument. It's basically saying, well, it's not unnecessary suffering because it's necessary, and it's not necessary because, and it's necessary because it's not unnecessary. He really is just assuming that one is confirming the other. The question is how you know that this has some sort of necessary value at the end of the day.
Or well, I mean, there's a necessary within it necessary. Like if, for example, you take baby dying of malaria, the baby dies, the parents suffer greatly because of it, wind up getting divorced, and both end up marrying people who make them considerably happier. They eventually end up thanking God for it, yada, yada, yada. Some good came from it, even in a theological context. They're now even more devoted to God, ultimately because of the death of their infant in a truly horrible way. So there is some value in it, depending on where you set your markers for values. That does not mean that the baby who is robbed of its life in a truly horrible fashion cannot regret that,
Retributive justice, but that it restores. So I mean,
eventually I get paroled from hell, and then I get back into heaven.
You can look at it like that. Yes, you can look at it like that.
Oh, okay. I thought you just
but yeah.
I thought you just stayed there until you liked it. I was gonna say this is getting freaky. Okay, hold on. That's what I follow back into.
You got to learn your lessons, but you can think of it as like an extended purgatory of sorts. It's where the suffering, because in the Orthodox tradition, the suffering of hell is not God putting you in some torturous dungeon. What it is God reflects light and love, and so those who could reciprocate His love experience that has warmth and light, whereas those who don't reciprocate His love, His holiness is experienced as suffer. It's overwhelming to them and they can't stand it. And so what that does is it can eventually purge away all the sin, to where the agent, then becomes, gets into heaven.
Right, like a really intensive spa treatment.
All right, I think we hammered this one. So, Apollos, do you want to
like that? You're good. That is consistent within analytic philosophy of religion. Sure.
All right.
It's anthropomorphizing it vastly, but you can look at it like that. Sure.
I want to hand the floor back over to Apollos to go down some of the roots and arguments that he was getting into there with his screen share before we got all into back into Eric's intro with the problem of evil and stuff like that. So
yeah, no worries, nothing in particular. Yeah, I think.
How late are we going to tonight, by the way?
Well, we can get.
I think we went over an hour.
Yeah, we can get into the super chats if you guys feel like that would be more fruitful at this point. If you guys are all done unpacking.
I think that we've touched on everybody's openings, so I think we're probably good for super chats, right?
Yeah.
All right, you don't have to.
Are we going to do like closings?
Yeah, I usually like to do them at the end, or if you have to go, if you get to a point where you're like, hey, I've run out of time, whatever's going on. But yeah, then I'll just ask for it and I'll let you have a closing. But we'll try to get through the super chats, of course. So yeah,
okay,
a big round of virtual applause to our speakers tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Our audience.
Okay, looks like they're moving into. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sort of Travis did most of the talking. Apollos did most of showing slides. I think that he didn't really, like, when it came to the sort of, he had all of these talking points on screen shares, but when the rubber met the road and you actually had to engage with the opposing idea and present it, he really didn't have anything to say. I don't know whether that's because he's new to debate or just, couldn't find his voice that night, but really he didn't have a lot to say. I found Travis to be bloviating. I think that a lot of the stuff he said did not actually get to the heart of the matter. I think that his ideas about axiology, sort of this idea that you have to share his values, I get if we were doing an internal critique of Christianity, I would get that you have to assign the values to it. But even that would have problems, and I won't go there again, but that would have problems. And two, like we're talking about the truth of something, we don't have to assume your values, right? We're saying what is real in actuality. Well, both you and I claim that we are seeing reality and actuality as it is. So the question then becomes, why should I accept your value structure, right? Why should I accept that? If that's not the truth, you're saying it is true that these values, you have to accept that. No, only if we're doing an internal critique. If we're doing an internal critique and say, hey, let's assume Christianity is true and all of these things, yeah, maybe, but I don't see why we would do it if we're just discussing what is true and what isn't.
It reminds me a lot of arguments with kids on the playground in elementary school. The vocabulary is much more advanced, but ultimately it breaks down to there's this one kid who's decided that he owns the sandbox. And every time you try to approach the sandbox, he makes up a new rule explaining why you can't use his sandbox. And you keep asking him, why should I follow your rules? And he just proposes new made up rules, made up right on the spot. It's more sophisticated than that, but it shares a lot of commonalities in that it's all just layers of made up stuff to reinforce the initial made up stuff.
Right. Well, I think it's more complex than that. I think it's basically, it comes down to something that we've been seeing a lot, which is they will say, hey, this makes sense within Christianity. This is the framework of Christianity. Now prove me wrong. Essentially what he's saying is there's nothing, if you assume my value structure to things, if you assume, like you're doing an internal critique, right? If you assume that, for instance, all of this suffering has value. If you do that, there's nothing impossible about a God. It makes logical sense. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about whether it is true. So this bar becomes, and I'll give a big shout out to Low Bar Bill, that the bar becomes, is it logically impossible? And if it's not logically impossible, therefore God exists. And that is not how we determine whether things exist. Like, for instance, if my wife is not in the room and I go, well, it's not logically impossible that she's, watching TV in the other room right now. And if it's not logically impossible, then that must be happening. That isn't how we go about getting the truth. We basically say, maybe it's a process of elimination. Did she leave? No. Is she in any of the other rooms? So we can make a deductive argument and say, hey, it must be there. But that's not what he's doing. And he's not doing induction. He's not like going, hey, I see the sounds of the television or something leads me to believe she's in the other room. He's not doing that either. And he's not doing abductive, which is probability. He's just saying it's not logically impossible. Therefore, it's the truth. You could apply that to literally any god. You could apply it to any magical thing. You could apply it to anything. Logical impossibility does not determine the state of affairs of reality. It just doesn't. What you want is for an argument to be sound as well, whether there is some reason why you believe it. Okay, I don't know why the weasel's doing that, but
I'm just playing with the screen.
Okay.
Because I'm silly.
I didn't mean to like undercut the importance of what you were saying, Mark. But
I don't know. I just feel like a weasel's cracking onto me, and I don't know how to feel about that.
I mean, you're on one side, Ember's on the other.
Okay,
let's have a good time.
Weasel sandwich.
Yeah, I'm also on the other side of the planet as well. Like, seriously.
Planet sandwich.
I will
Planet
find
sandwich.
you.
Yeah, you probably won't. You probably won't.
How big is Perth?
I think it's about 5 million people.
Yeah, I can deal with that.
Okay.
It'll take a minute.
Yeah.
You get there and just check the phone book.
I don't know. I mean, we've got biosecurity laws. I don't see them letting in a weasel anytime soon, quite frankly. But
it's
give
an
it a try.
extremely. I don't talk about it as much anymore, but it's an extremely high tech trench coat. Okay, like the whole thing. Like, do I look like a weasel to you? Don't answer that. It's going to be hurtful. I can read your mind.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sold.
Weasel powers.
What did you think, Vandy? What did you think of? Did you see the whole thing, or did you just see the part 3 that we're watching?
I basically only saw the parts that we were watching. I thought that I remember. Okay, so one of the parts, the word salad that was coming out, it was just like a whole lot of jargon and stuff to make it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in fairness, I had to look up what axiology was, and it's the study of like or consideration or philosophical field of like values and like what is valuable and or right roughly.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
And but I remember listening to what that guy said, and I was like, there might be something there, but like if there is, you're not. It doesn't sound like it. It sounded like an empty. He sounded like an empty shirt.
I'm not sure what an empty shirt sounds like, to be honest with you. I'm trying to pass that right now. Clothy, very clothy.
Well, we used to refer to our newscasters as empty
Vacuous.
suits.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Vacuous. So like they say things, but there isn't much content there. And the thing is, the difference between like this guy and a lot of other people is that there was a lot of dressing it up in terminology that people aren't familiar with. But there wasn't any there a lot of the time. And so it was really great whenever Grayson would respond and be like, well, what do you mean by this? Like so many times he asked exactly the question that I wanted to ask. So it was it's yeah, it was
Mhm.
we don't cover like religion directly much on Bad Science Sunday, so I don't get that much of an opportunity to sort of directly think about and process how people who are talking about that subject and defending that proposition really do it. So it was awesome.
Yeah, and I think that your methodology would more be based around, empiricism, and empiricism sort of, if you can't experience it with your senses, then you don't, there's no way we can know anything except through our senses. And I've always said that empiricism is something that, say, the idealists, the people that think you can just, get to truth by thinking about it, when the rubber meets the road, they're all empiricists. Like if they've got to cross the road, they're not using idealism for that. They're actually looking both directions. So I think that, it's kind of weird for people to go, well, I'm going to use idealism. And it's like, well, how do you tell the difference between an idea that is truth and a delusion? You can't. So, I think it's that you would come at it at a much different way and a much more reliable way than sort of, because if you take his argument that, hey, use my axology, this has value, you could do that for any religion. Muslims often do. They say, hey, it promotes community. It has all of these rules that people, follow, that they say it has value as well. So they both can't be true.
Well, I mean, when they make exclusive claims, they certainly can't be true about those claims. And it's one of the things that I think is that is sort of fundamental to sort of my epistemology, that is sometimes hard to sort of describe, is that an explanation, one of the benefits for one of the things in favor of an explanation is its fragility. And so the idea that like an explanation is specific, it makes specific claims. You can't just mold it to fit any sort of thing that you want. Like
prophecy.
The explanation for or people used to explain the seasons by talking about gods that were doing different things at different times of the year, which is actually just like smuggling seasons back into it for a different reason. But you can attribute anything to that. Whereas if you explain it with the Earth's tilt and then orbiting around the sun, then it gives a specific prediction for parts of the world that you've never seen before. You can't just fit anything into it. It's fragile in that respect. And that is one of the falsifiable. Exactly, like exactly. And it forces you, like, if you have to modify it, people like scientific theories get modified all the time. Post hoc, like after the data has been discovered, because sometimes you find data and then you're like, well, we got to explain this, and you find an explanation, and some of those explanations are good and some of them are bad. One big example of this is like neutrino masses. Neutrinos in the standard model, the sort of purest, nicest version of it, they don't have masses. But you can make neutrinos have masses in the standard model. Like, you can do it. It's not hard or weird or controversial to do.
That makes you more powerful than Jesus.
Well, I mean, again, the powers of not being fictional. Well, okay, Jesus wasn't fictional, but yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. That is debatable.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't remember what I was saying.
That's all right. That's okay. I think that you're just sort of explaining why the methodology you're using is superior to, as one person in the chat said, like it's a good story. Like,
Yeah,
that is
the
not-
fragility
Yeah.
of ideas.
Yeah,
Because
fragility of ideas.
you could make neutrinos have mass for mathematical reasons, but they don't seem to have them. They don't need to have them, etc.
But they until they did, like they do. Neutrinos do have mass, and that was, but that was a surprise. Some people describe that as beyond standard model physics, but it's not in like the cool, sexy way that we're all waiting for.
Yeah,
and but they do, and it's actually the neutrino mass question is still it's one of the most interesting areas of particle physics, I think, because
well, it varies
we
depending on the
actually
experiment,
we
doesn't it?
know we know the distance between the different mass eigenstates. So neutrinos, there are 3 flavors of neutrinos, and then there are also 3 eigenmasses of neutrinos, and they're not the same. So that's why neutrinos oscillate between having like different amounts of mass, but we know the separation between them. But we actually, and there are 2 that are closer together. There are 2 mass states of neutrinos that are closer together, and then there's another one that's farther apart. But we don't actually know if the 2 that are closer together are above or below the other one.
I mean, frankly, it's wild that we can even detect a difference. It's fucking crazy.
I'm not, and I actually, I don't know off the top of my head how they detect that difference. But I know that at least it was an unsolved problem. Maybe in the last few years it's been solved, but I don't think so. I feel like I would have.
Yeah, as Jason puts it, we need more sophisticated thingies. We do. We have some really fucking impressive thingies.
We do. You got to shoot the laser. You gotta fire the laser. Yeah.
Freaking lasers. Oh goodness. So my laser hair removal place, I've had to postpone, or they've had to postpone a couple of my appointments because they keep losing staff. Whatever. I'm like, but if that's your job, you get to shoot people with lasers all day. I mean, Vandy, I mentioned before that I'm envious of your job because you get to play with lasers, but these people get to shoot lasers at people. Holy shit.
Yeah, but like, I'm not saying I get to do that because I totally don't get to do that, but the laser is invisible and they would never know. It's not that hard to like find out something like that if you have the right sort of like cameras. A lot of cameras, if you take off their like filters, they will totally see infrared light just fine.
Yeah, I mean that's what an infrared camera, a camera. There's cameras that are designed specifically to see in infrared, like night vision headsets and whatnot. But like if you take a Sony A7 off the shelf or whatever, there is a filter to block infrared. If you peel that filter off, you now have a multi-spectrum camera. And if you want an infrared camera, you put a different filter on to block everything but the infrared.
Exactly.
Alex makes a good point. You would have to deal with people. Of course, dealing with people includes shooting a laser at them.
But I get to shoot lasers and I rarely have to deal. I wear headphones all day long. Even when I'm talking to other people, like they've realized that when I'm talking to them, I'm just gonna have headphones on. It's like my security blanket, right? I'm an adult man, I promise, but I have a security blanket headphones. That is how I interface with the world because I'm a mature adult. I swear.
Absolutely. I mean, hell, I wear a headset. Of course, being a truck driver, I have to wear a headset, but details. There was a thing I wanted to make sure to work in. I got reminded of it a few minutes ago, and I didn't want to disrupt the flow of conversation. But as you may have heard, Mr. Ken Ham has built a big fucking fake boat in the middle of Kentucky, and a lot of people are pissed about it. And our friend Joe from over at the Kentucky Atheist is spearheading this year's protest, and he's asked me to run an ad produced by the wonderful Jess of How to Rule an Asteroid. Playing it earlier in the show would have been better, but at least I'm remembering to do it. So let's hit that real quick before we wrap up. Hell yeah, that's good shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yay, we did the thing. Okay. What's y'all? Holy shit, P-Town is still around.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell him I don't hate something that doesn't exist. It would be like, hating Santa Claus for not sending me presents or something. You don't hate something that doesn't exist. There's nothing to hate.
What are you trying to say about Santa, Mark?
Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. Yeah, so this whole thing, like, when people get upset, they're not getting upset at God. They're getting upset at the people that claim that God is real. They're not, there's no, like, where is this God to get upset at? He's not under the table. He's not, like, you won't present him in any way. If you want me to get angry at God, present a God first.
I'm right here.
Right. You do.
Have a certain resemblance to one of our emojis.
You do. Are you saying I believe in a God? Okay, good story, mate. I don't know. P-Town, yeah.
What I believe?
Oh, P-Town.
I'm Laser Jesus. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Look, may very well be true, but I'm still not going to wash your feet.
People get paid good money for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's not me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get paid good money for that sort of thing. So if you haven't heard about the OnlyFans that I'm starting with Leo.
Wow.
The name of it is Physics is Hard. And it
no. No.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as long as it works, I'm far be it for me to shame anybody.
To make the Christians mad. Is that basically what you're doing? Because they get big mad about that.
They get mad about the things that they themselves search for.
They can get big mad, but we're just getting big because physics is hard.
Physics is hard.
Fully around.
Only fermions. I love it.
You can't leak our intellectual property like that. Come on. It's a long-term strategy.
Oh goodness. Alrighty, folks. Let's do the promo thing. What good stuff have you got coming up? Vandy, I understand you do a show somewhere at some time randomly. You've been on a few shows. You were just over at L's. L Trucker just had the 169 special. Yeah. 13 squared. Woo.
Yeah, exactly. And that God, that's such a sexy coincidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Anyway, yeah, so I do Bad Science Sunday. Look, everybody who is watching this check, I don't know if I've seen John Lowell or whoever, I can't remember, but everybody else in the chat like knows about Bad Science Sunday, I'm sure. Tomorrow we have Durante Lamar. If I looked up yes, February 23rd.
Oh hell yeah!
And I noticed that Durante was also on the thing that you just like showed. So
yeah, Durante is aggressively trying to build community, which, as you know, is a thing that both Mark and I have been hugely proponents of for a long time. But Durante, like, I don't know. He's got that preacher charisma. He's like the atheist minister, and it's freaking cool. He's going places. He's doing things. He's hanging out with Chris Mallard on the Daily Atheist Morning Show. He's doing the Bridge community, which isn't strictly atheist. It's secular. So religious people are welcome too. It's about human values, human lives, all that sorts of stuff. He's going on tour with that. He's inviting people. He's invited me to join him on his Bible study with an ex-pastor because, I myself am an ex-minister. And, he's doing all the things, and it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be like a great show. We've been doing Bad Science Sunday for over 2 years now. I had no idea. I was like, what? Because I do one thing very, very well, and that
I
is
thought Bad Science Sunday started after me.
No, we've been doing this since the start of 2023. Yeah.
How long have I been doing this?
Roughly 2 years. Yeah. No, you started, I think, a little bit before us.
Did I?
Yeah,
I think
you
so.
already
You've been doing this for more than 2 years. Yeah.
That can't be right.
Yeah, your channel is slightly older than mine.
I did a membership milestone chat earlier here.
Okay.
And it was like 19 or something months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 19 months. And
it's
I
similar for
monetized
you.
in my 6th month.
Yeah.
So
my first debates were 3 years ago. Oh, that's wild.
Yep.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
What even is time?
And I still haven't managed to get the hang of this thing. That's wild.
I mean, you're better than me. My strategy, again, is to not make content.
Yeah. No, it's working out real well. For, yeah.
It's super effective. I don't know.
All right. I've also double booked not double booked. I've booked something for the same time as Bad Science Sunday, so you will get a choice. I'd probably be going to Bad Science Sunday if I had a choice because it's a debate against Jim Bob on is it rational to believe in a God? Yeah, so it's going to be an absolute debacle. So a lot of people have asked me why I'm doing this, and it's more because he's been very well. No, he's just been very lippy on modern day debate. He's come on there and said, I'm going to take your chat and I'm going to do this and do that and do the other. And I was not happy with the people that engaged on him on modern day debate. Like Craig, I like Fight the Flat Earth. I don't share his debate style, but I do think he's a good guy. It's just he wasn't familiar with the topic, and I didn't. He's trying to. In the death of Flat Earth, I think he's trying to pivot, which is fair enough because, like, so little people are taking it seriously after the final experiment. It was the nail in the coffin. Like these people are just done. They're roasted.
I mean, it was before, but now
exactly. No, nobody was ever taking it seriously. Like they were. Do you think that right now, if you were running modern day debates, would you do more or fewer Flat Earth debates? Because I would do
absolutely fewer.
I would not.
Yeah.
No, because it's fucking hilarious, man. It's more hilarious than ever. Like, yeah. But anyway, like, so he's sort of been very lippy. So I just want to introduce him, like, put the fear of atheists in him, basically. So, because he's not like he's got these sort of pre-sup ideas, but I don't think his arguments are very good. They're very, very poor, in fact. So, I really do want to sort of, I'm definitely not trying to build any kind of a relationship with Jim Bob. The guy's a horror show, but these people are coming out of the woodwork.
and you know, people were asking for it. So I'm going to be doing that over at Raging Tomato. I don't know who they are. They say they're neutral. Hopefully they are. I don't know why other channels weren't suitable, but he wanted to go there, so it's like, oh, whatever. And at the end of the day, it does also sort of put a spotlight on me as well as a debater. Like, you know, I'm not doing it simply out of no nothing in it for me as well. He does have a huge audience. Not that I really want any of them, but if I'm going to be known as somebody who debates, then I really do have to do debates. And at the moment, I'm struggling to find them. So yeah, I'm taking what I can get at the moment. So sorry if that offends you. Sorry if you don't like the interlocutor. Sorry if it really upsets you. I have to find debates because that's what my YouTube channel is based upon. It would be like, you know, Bad Science Sunday having a channel based upon bad science and all the science is good across the internet. Like, it just,
yeah,
you know,
that would suck.
That would be an amazing
like
day,
when we do cover something where the person ends up actually like having more points in their favor than we expected. We had this with Kip a few weeks back, where like the first chunk of it, like the guy actually was making a lot of observations, and Kip was like, "Yeah, no, that's actually like,
okay."
And then at the end, he got into Jesus thought that Yahweh was an alien,
right?
But we had to. But like the first video that we focused on, actually, like the words that came out of this guy's mouth, most of them weren't that bad,
right?
Because and then we got to he thought Yahweh was an alien. Jesus thought Yahweh was an alien.
And then you
Vandy,
got boundary condition. Yeah, it's just that's what it
yeah.
Here we are in crazy land.
But have you ever considered
aliens?
Yeah, that is a meme.
Aliens.
I know we need the hair. It's just
I
great
wonder if that
how
was accidental or on purpose, quite frankly. I feel like they did that hair on purpose so he could be, you know,
we
How's that?
If I ever get like
pretty
excessive funds, I should get like specialized wigs for that sort of thing.
Aliens.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Okay.
Sleep finally, you guys.
So we've got Bad Science Sunday, Mark's this side, Mark's debate, and of course Mark's usual content. And Fundamentalist Fails. And next week we'll be back over on Mark's channel with a fresh new debate.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know what it will be. I have no idea what it will be.
It's a
things go well. It could be the debate that I do. I could do my own debate. That would be weird.
It would be.
Like to do that.
I mean, we do invite the guests who participate to.
That's true.
So you know,
yeah, I think I'd be so critical on myself, though. I think, like, you think I nitpick for other people. I think I would like be like, no, I shouldn't have said that.
Damn it, Mark! Why did you do that?
That's the real reason I don't make content, by the way.
Right. Yeah, it's a strange one. You've got to sort of accept like, your fallibility kind of thing. You got to accept sort of the fact that you're going to screw up. It's a weird place. It's a weird place. Yeah.
Hell yeah. And then as for me, aside from catching me next week over at Mark's Place for brand new debate, you can also find me Thursdays on the Transpositions. I also have a bunch of other shows on other channels. All my links are my de facto link tree is better than ember.com, and there's other goodies there besides channels and whatnot, if you're so inclined. But yeah, I think that pretty much does it, folks. Any final thoughts?
No, just well done to Grayson and Planet Peterson, and at least I want to give props to the theists as well for having a reasonable debate and not sort of turning it into a garbage fight. Yeah, just sort of not taking it personally that they didn't believe or that they were sort of picking away. That's the idea. So I think they were great, and I think that Grayson and Planet Peterson, Eric did fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Grayson and Vandy for jumping on, joining us on the panel,
Yeah.
making it more entertaining and adding more perspectives and all kinds of good stuff. Thanks everybody in the live chat and watching in the future. Don't forget to click the buttons. It helps ever so much. And as always, remember, you don't have to presuppose a superior axiology to serve the grand narrative, because you are better than religion. Good night.
Just like a spark that's breaking out, can't make a stop.